Chapter 1836. Ji-Yin 2. Don't tell me you plan to hide here for a month? Lung Ruoxia's face was filled with black lines as she asked. There were all kinds of birds in a big forest. She had just entered this place for the first day, and she had already met such a lazy guy. She really didn't know how his parents had educated their child. To tell their child's parents this, it could be considered a weirdo, right? Moreover, Qingju had also clearly told her that Ji-Yin was speaking the truth. Qingju was worried about Ji-Yin, and had already read his mind. I did have that idea, but it's a pity that you found out on the first day. Ooh, why is my luck so bad? Ji-Yin's face was bitter, as if he was about to cry. When Lung Ruoxia saw this, her forehead was already covered in dark clouds. This fellow was really... Let's discuss this, okay? Let's not fight anymore. I admit defeat, and I can give you the jade plate. Please spare my life. I'm not married yet. Sob. I have the elderly and the children at home, and they all need me to take care of them. They can't live without me. Seeing that Lung Ruoxia didn't respond, Ji-Yin continued to complain. His words almost drove Lung Ruoxia mad. This fellow really made her speechless. Lung Ruoxia was instantly rendered speechless and flabbergasted, not knowing what to say. Her beautiful eyes glared at Ji-Yin for a long while before Lung Ruoxia blurted out. Aren't you still single? Where did you get the idea of having a child? I still have a group of younger brothers and sisters who need me to take care of them. And my parents, great-grandfather, great-grandmother, great-grandfather. As Ji-Yin spoke, he counted with his fingers. However, before he could finish his long-winded speech, he was interrupted by Lung Ruoxia, who could no longer bear it. Stop. If you continue, I'll just kill you right now, and your family will have no one to rely on. Lung Ruoxia threatened helplessly, even though she knew that this fellow's words had a lot of exaggerations, but seeing how he was so good at making things up, she wouldn't be calculative with him. Furthermore, winning against such a weirdo didn't give her any sense of accomplishment. Furthermore, they hadn't even started fighting, and this fellow had already admitted defeat. He even took the initiative to give her the jade token. Just thinking about it made her feel like laughing. If I don't tell you, will you let me go? Ji-Yin said uncertainly. He could tell that this woman's temper wasn't very good, because she was extremely impatient. Her father was right again. The more beautiful a woman was, the worse her temper would be. Did I say I wouldn't let you go? Lung Ruoxia raised her eyebrows and asked. Hee. No. I misunderstood. I thought you wanted to fight me. Ji-Yin said, somewhat embarrassed. Fight you? I'm sorry, you can't pique my interest in fighting. Lung Ruoxia said without giving him any face. There was even a hint of disdain in her words. Woo. You've hurt my self-esteem. Ji-Yin's face was filled with hidden bitterness as a layer of mist appeared in his clear eyes. You actually hurt your self-esteem? When Lung Ruoxia heard Ji-Yin's words, a look of surprise appeared on her face. She didn't mishear, right? Yes. Ji-Yin solemnly nodded his head. Then he looked at Lung Ruoxia with a hint of resentment. Where's your pride? Let me take a look. Lung Ruoxia asked curiously. This can only be understood, not explained. Ji-Yin lowered his head shyly, his cheeks blushed. Seeing him like this, Lung Ruoxia really wanted to give him a vicious kick. However, bullying him felt like bullying a small animal. His pitiful look was too much like some kind of small animal. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxia sighed heavily in her heart. Then she turned around and left. However, she had just taken a step when she felt her sleeve being tugged by something. Why are you pulling me? Do you want to challenge me? Lung Ruoxia turned around and raised her brows. She looked at Ji-Yin with a half-smile. Of course not. When Ji-Yin heard this, he was so frightened that he quickly let go of Lung Ruoxia's sleeve. You can't leave me behind. Ji-Yin said pitifully, his eyes beginning to tear up. Why can't I just leave you behind? When Lung Ruoxia heard this, she laughed. However, the beautiful smile on her face caused Ji-Yin's heart to palpitate with fear. Ji-Yin unconsciously lowered his head, not daring to look at the bright smile on Lung Ruoxia's face. Women were all tigers, and beautiful women were the big tigers among tigers. This was his father's wise saying, and he had been influenced by it since he was young. Thus, Lung Ruox's beauty was not a lethal poison to him, and he believed in it without a doubt. Thus, when he first saw Lung Ruoxia, other than being stunned, his mind was filled with his father's warnings. Other than that, he had no other thoughts. You're the first person I've met here, so our friendship is naturally different. So, you can't leave me behind. After thinking for a moment, Ji-yin said in a low voice, You're wrong. In my eyes, you're just a passerby. So, I can totally abandon you. Lung Ruoxia said with a smile. Arg. No. How could you do this? Isn't it good for us to be together? It's better for the two of us to take care of each other, right? Ji-yin tried his best to put on a cute expression as he smiled. Then may I ask if you're taking care of me, or am taking care of you? Lung Ruoxia could not help but ask. Of course, we'll take care of each other. Besides, I can protect you too, right? Ji-yin said with a smile. You want to protect me? Don't tell me that your protection is for me to hide here with you? Lung Ruoxia took a look at Ji-yun's proud expression and guessed. How do you know? You're really amazing. There's nothing wrong with this place. At least it's safe. Ji-yun said heartlessly. Safe? How could I find out that it was safe? If I really wanted to kill you, would you still have your life? Lung Ruoxia looked at Ji-yun helplessly. But you didn't kill him, did you? I know you won't kill me. We're already friends, aren't we? Ji-yun said in a friendly manner. We can't be considered friends. I've said it before, you're just a passerby. Lung Ruoxia was about to go crazy. Don't be like this. Why do you have to keep people 1,000 miles away? Ji-yun grumbled. After he finished speaking, his mischievous hand tugged at Lung Ruoxia's sleeve. Lung Ruoxia looked at her own sleeve, then at GQ. She let out a heavy sigh, and sat down under the tree. Seeing this, Ji-yun also sat down. Right, you haven't told me your name yet. After sitting down, Ji-yun didn't want the awkward silence, so he quickly asked. Lung Ruoxia. Lung Ruoxia said softly. She was really helpless against this fellow. Putting aside the fact that he was very friendly, his skin was extremely thick. It's a nice name. Ji-yun praised with a silly smile. Then he enthusiastically said, Ruoxia, why don't we stay here for a month? My parents told me that if we're safe and sound after a month, we'll be able to get a ranking if we're lucky. Chapter 1837, Ji-yun 3. You've said it before. You also said that the idea of finding a place to hide was your parents' idea. Lung Ruoxia reminded. Yes, that's right. Let's hide here for a month. Ji-yun suggested. Ji-yun's words caused Lung Ruoxia to look at him seriously for a long while. Then she said, You're so unmotivated. Is this a tradition of your family? She was truly curious as to what kind of clan could produce such a weirdo. But then again, this idea seemed to be feasible, but the prerequisite was that it wouldn't be discovered. However, it was obvious that Ji-yun had not found the right hiding place. You can even tell? Ji-yun said with an embarrassed smile. Lung Ruoxia remained silent. She felt powerless in front of Ji-yun. Lung Ruoxia didn't speak for a long time while Ji-yun looked at her carefully. Neither of them spoke. At this time, Master Ning, who was watching their every move through the light screen, was full of question marks. What was Shui and that kid talking about? Why did the two of them sit down? Although they could see everything on the battlefield through the light screen, they could only see people and not hear what the people inside were saying. So, after seeing the two of them sit down, the master of the Ning family and the others couldn't help but guess. Clan head. What did young Miss Lung and that brat say? The Foreign Affairs elder asked in a low voice, his face full of curiosity. You're asking me, but who should I ask? I still want to know. The master of the Ning family glanced at the Foreign Affairs elder, and said unhappily, You guys are really gossipy. What can be said inside? It's nothing more than a companion. Uncle Long looked at the two of them and said calmly, What Brother Long said makes sense. It's indeed possible. However, why does this kid look so silly? The master of the Ning family said with dissatisfaction, like a father whose daughter had been taken away. As long as he saw a man close to his daughter, he would find it unusually piercing. Are there any men who aren't stupid in your eyes? Uncle Long looked at the master of the Ning family and teased him. There are. That demonic man isn't stupid. The master of the Ning family said dejectedly. He couldn't do anything to that evildoer. To be exact, he didn't even care about him as his godfather. He didn't know why, but he was a little afraid of that evildoer. Ha ha ha. Hearing the master of the Ning family's depressed words, Uncle Long laughed out loud, which made the master of the Ning family even more sullen. At the same time, Ji Yun's family members were also paying attention to the screen. When they saw that Lung Ruoxue had discovered Ji Yun and had almost killed him, they broke out in a cold sweat. Then they saw the two of them sit down and talk to each other. Only then did they relax a little. However, they were still worried. However, Lung Ruoxue and Ji Yun, who were in the middle of the battle, were naturally unaware of the thoughts of those who were closely related to them. The two of them stared at each other for a long while before Ji Yun took out a plump whole chicken from his storage ring. He then lit a fire and roasted the chicken over the fire. Following that, he sprinkled various seasonings on the chicken. Not long after, the aroma of the roast chicken wafted through the air. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue sighed again. Can you hide like this? Lung Ruoxue didn't know what to say. However, this fellow was quite particular. He was clearly going to hide, but he still wanted to roast chicken? I can't hide. You're a girl. I can't possibly let you go hungry. Ji Yun said with an aggrieved expression. Wu. Ruoxue was finally paying attention to him. It really wasn't easy. It seemed like the charm of food was greater. He thought to himself gloomily. In reality, he was thinking too much. Lung Ruoxue only felt that his actions were a little illogical, and it wasn't because he was interested in the chicken. You're so considerate. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but roll her eyes. Hee hee. You've noticed. Ji Yun's dejected expression was replaced by a brilliant smile. This guy really liked to take advantage of others. After hearing Ji Yun's words, Lung Ruoxue couldn't be bothered with him anymore. However, Ji Yun didn't take it to heart. After he finished roasting the chicken, he took the initiative to pass it to Lung Ruoxue and said solicitously, Quickly eat. My cooking skills are not bad, it won't taste good when it's cold. I'm not hungry. Lung Ruoxue said as she looked at the sizzling chicken. She couldn't deny that Ji Yun's cooking skills were not bad, because the chicken smelled very good. However, when she thought about Ji Yun's smug personality, she lost her appetite. How can I not be hungry? We've been here for a long time. Come, let's eat. You're welcome. I'm not going to charge you. Ji Yun urged with a smile. From what you're saying, you're planning to collect money from someone else? After hearing Ji Yun's words, Lung Ruoxue was even more speechless. That's a must. I'm not obligated to get food for free. However, I won't take money from friends I acknowledge. Ji Yun promised. In other words, Lung Ruoxue was a friend that he had acknowledged. Do I need to thank you? Lung Ruoxue looked at Ji Yun and said in a serious tone. No need to thank me. You just need to remember that we are partners. Ji Yun laughed. He was slightly proud in his heart. A chicken had pulled the relationship between the two closer. He thought to himself happily. All right. Since we're partners, then I won't be polite. Lung Ruoxue finally understood that she couldn't get through to this fellow. Hence, she didn't want to waste her breath on him. She snatched the roasted chicken away and took out the treasure from her bracelet. She then stuffed the roasted chicken into its little claws and instructed. Eat it. I promised to complete the task. After Baby finished speaking, it opened its mouth and took a big bite of the roast chicken. In one bite, 1/3 of the roast chicken disappeared. Then Baby finished off the fat roast chicken in 2 or 3 moves. Seeing this, Ji Yun couldn't help but widen his eyes and stammered. I haven't eaten yet. In fact, the chicken was roasted for the two of them because he was sure that Lung Ruoxue would not be able to finish it. Who knew that such an accident would happen? The entire chicken had entered the stomach of a little fox. He could not help but recall what his mother had told him before. Foxes love to eat chicken the most. Well, he had miscalculated. This chicken isn't that good. Looking at the aggrieved Ji Yun, Baby wiped his mouth in a matter-of-fact manner, and spoke with a slight dissatisfaction. If it's nothing, why did you eat it all? Ji Yun suppressed his anger and growled. How can I disobey my lovely master's orders? Baby also looked at Ji Yun with an aggrieved expression. In other words, if its master asked it to eat, would it dare to not eat? As a beastie, how can I not listen to my master's words? Baby added. All right. You're ruthless. Ji Yun felt helpless. He could deeply feel that this little fox was much more difficult to deal with than him. Baby smiled smugly and threw himself into Lung Ruoxia's arms. He said coyly, My lovely master, is this that special space? Oh. The smell here is weird, I don't like it. Baby covered his little nose in disdain. Then I'll send you back. Lung Ruoxia stroked her baby's fur and smiled. Yes. I'll go back first. My master is summoning me for something. Baby nodded his little head. Following that, Lung Ruoxia placed the treasure back into the bracelet. After sending the treasure away, Lung Ruoxia felt a probing gaze on her. She couldn't help but raise her head and look at Ji Yun. Why are you looking at me like that? It's nothing. I just think that you're getting along well with Beastie. Ji Yun said with an envious expression. Of course I treat my Beastie as family. Lung Ruoxia said with pride. No wonder. Ji Yun nodded, a smile of understanding appearing on his face. Then he changed the topic and said, Ruoxia, since we have decided to hide here for a month, what do you think we should do? The two of them couldn't just stare at each other for a month, could they? Did I say I'm going to hide here? Lung Ruoxia was speechless. Where else would you hide? If you have a good place, then we can go together. Ji Yun said with a face full of anticipation. This place was indeed not that great, and it was very easy to be discovered. Fortunately, the person who discovered him this time was Lung Ruoxia. Otherwise, if it had been an extremely vicious person, wouldn't his little life have been lost? I don't have a good place. I just want to find a place with people and fight with a few people I don't like. Do you want to come? Lung Ruoxia chuckled. Ruoxia, fighting is a barbarian's behavior. We're all well-mannered children, so we really shouldn't like to fight. Moreover, you're a girl, so you shouldn't fight. When Ji Yun heard that Lung Ruoxia was going to fight, he quickly advised her. So you don't want to go with me? Then let's part ways here. We'll meet again. Lung Ruoxia said with her eyes half closed. After speaking, she stood up and prepared to leave. Seeing this, Ji Yun hurriedly pulled her back and said with an aggrieved expression, You want to get rid of me again? You're so mean. You were the one who said you wouldn't go with me. Lung Ruoxia replied in a slightly aggrieved tone. All right. He was right, she did want to get rid of this big burden. Chapter 1838. A Feud 1. You don't have a good place to hide. Besides, it's not right to be violent to others. Tears welled up in Ji Yun's eyes as he said in an extremely aggrieved voice. Woo, this woman is so fierce. He was so scared. It's wrong to use violence on others, but what if others use violence on us? Lung Ruoxia asked, feeling a little speechless. That's still wrong. Ji Yun lowered his head and whispered. He even peeked at Lung Ruoxia with pitiful eyes. Do you think they'll let us go just because you said we're wrong? You're that innocent? Lung Ruoxia rolled her eyes and asked helplessly. We can talk about facts and reason with them. That's why you didn't attack me. At the mention of this, Ji Yun's interest was piqued, and he spoke with a smug expression. That's because I'm too lazy to make a move on you. Lung Ruoxia was a little angry. She finally realized that this fellow had the potential to make people angry. When she saw him, she wanted to beat him up even more. Good. You're just too lazy to make a move on me, but that should be fine, right? Ji Yun coaxed him helplessly. When Lung Ruoxia heard his words, she didn't want to stay here for another second. Without thinking, she turned around and prepared to leave. However, Ji Yun was like a piece of sticky candy, sticking to her side and following her step by step. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxia couldn't take it anymore. She roared. How long do you want to follow me? Don't follow me. We're partners. If I don't follow you, who should I follow? Didn't we agree to look out for each other? How could you abandon me? After saying this, Ji Yun's eyes began to water up slowly, as if a heavy rain was about to fall at any moment. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxia's beautiful brows furrowed. This fellow really had the ability to drive people crazy. She took a few deep breaths and suppressed her anger. You're the one who insisted on hiding here and not leaving with me. So we've already parted ways. We'll meet again. Stop following me. With that, Lung Ruoxue quickly teleported away from the place. However, no matter where she went, there would always be a figure that followed her at the same speed. Instantly in the vast space, only 2 rays of light as fast as meteors could be seen flashing by. After a long time, Lung Ruoxue stopped in her tracks and looked at Ji Yun, who was panting slightly but still following closely behind her, with a gloomy expression. She shouted helplessly, "How long do you want to follow me?" They had already made a round, so how did this guy catch up to her? After going around in a circle, the 2 of them actually returned to their original spot. We're partners. Lung Ruoxue's fierceness caused Ji Yun to shrink back as he spoke in fear. I'm going to find someone to fight and you're not going. Lung Ruoxue glared at him with her beautiful eyes. Fighting is not good. Seeing Lung Ruoxue's unfriendly expression, Ji Yun's voice grew softer and softer. I want to find someone to fight right now. What do you think I should do? Lung Ruoxue said in an unpleasant tone. The air here was already very hot-tempered, and now that she had met this guy, the anger in her heart had only grown. If she didn't find a few unlucky guys to vent her anger, then the one who would be in trouble would be this Ji Yun in front of her. However, she definitely couldn't beat Ji Yun up. Otherwise, if he cried, he would go crazy. Violence is not good. Ji Yun persevered in his attempt to persuade her. However, when he saw Lung Ruoxue's eyes filled with warning, he quickly changed his words. However, it's still necessary to properly vent. Then I'm going to find someone to vent my anger on. Lung Ruoxue said with satisfaction. Although this Ji Yun was a little abnormal, he was still quite tactful. Just based on this point, she wouldn't make things too difficult for him. After all, it wasn't easy to meet such a strange person here. After she finished speaking, Lung Ruoxue couldn't wait to slip away. Wait! Ji Yun quickly called out to Lung Ruoxue. He gritted his teeth and said, I'll go with you. He made up his mind and went all out. Are you sure? Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and asked in disbelief. Yes. Ji Yun nodded his head heavily and continued. I have to protect you. I don't need your protection. Lung Ruoxue rolled her eyes as she replied in an ungrateful manner. She didn't think that Ji Yun, with his weak appearance, would be able to protect her. It was already good enough that this guy didn't drag her down. All women need men to protect them. This is what my father always says. Ji Yun said proudly. Although he was sometimes puzzled, his father often said that women were tigers, but he also told him that men should protect women. These words seemed to be somewhat contradictory, but he did not ask for the reason. In any case, his father would never lie to him. Didn't your father tell you that some women don't need a man's protection? Lung Ruoxue didn't know what to say to that old man from the Ji family. How did he teach his son? He had actually taught a one-track-minded fellow. No, but father told me not to protect all women. I should protect those that I like. Ji Yun said with a silly smile. His expression seemed to say, It's your honor, right? Thank you for finding me pleasing to the eye. Lung Ruoxue was completely convinced. To be honest, she didn't want to be liked by him, nor did she want to be protected by him. From her point of view, the one who needed protection was this man. However, it was a good thing that his father didn't ask him to protect all the women in the world. Otherwise, this poor fellow would have died of exhaustion. You don't have to be so polite, we're partners. Ji Yun said in a slightly smug manner. Seeing him like this, Lung Ruoxue could only sigh and didn't want to say anything else. This fellow couldn't show him any respect, otherwise he would definitely show off. Let's go. After they decided to leave, Ji Yun urged them. Wait, tell me first, how did you catch up to me? He asked. Lung Ruoxue couldn't understand. According to common sense, it wasn't easy for someone to catch up to her when she teleported. After all, it was hard to determine the coordinates. However, this fellow was still chasing after her. This made her rather depressed because she couldn't get rid of him. This is a secret technique of our family. Ji Yun said mysteriously, but with a hint of pride. He can catch up to everyone? Lung Ruoxua asked with interest. No, it's hard to track someone who is much stronger than you. Ji Yun spoke the truth. In truth, in his opinion, their clan's tracking technique was of little value. This was because this technique could only track down people who were not much weaker than him. If it could track everyone, then this secret technique would truly be a priceless treasure. To think that the elders in his family were so smug. He pursed his lips and sighed in his heart. Fortunately, the ancestors of the Ji family didn't know what their descendants were thinking. Otherwise, they would be depressed to death. And the ancestor who created this secret technique would be so angry that he would climb out of hell to settle the score with him. That old ancestor had already died. Chapter 1839. A Feud 2. I see. Hearing Ji Yun's words, Lung Ruoxia's interest diminished. Ruoxiu, shall we go? Seeing that Lung Ruoxia didn't seem too happy, Ji Yun cautiously asked. Let's go. Lung Ruoxia nodded. She had long wanted to leave this place. If she had not met this fellow, she would not have wasted so much time here. Yes, yes. Ji Yun hastily nodded his head. After making up his mind to leave this place, he was much calmer and no longer so conflicted. After that, the two of them left together. After getting along for a few days, Lung Ruoxia deeply regretted being together with this fellow. Not only was this fellow a chatterbox, he was also a coward. She had chosen a few paths, but this fellow refused to take them. He even insisted that she follow him and had him lead the way. The consequence of following him was that the more they walked, the more desolate the place became. Like the place they were at now, it was a boundless desert without even a single green spot. If it wasn't for the fact that she understood this fellow, and that Qingju had read his mind and knew that he was not in danger, Lung Ruoxia would have suspected that this fellow had brought her here on purpose. Ji Yun fearfully looked at Lung Ruoxia's unsightly expression and muttered, This place is okay, but there shouldn't be anyone here. After saying this, he immediately lowered his head, not daring to look at Lung Ruoxia's slightly darkened face. Is this the consequence of you leading the way? Lung Ruoxia said through gritted teeth. If it wasn't for this fellow's pitiful look that made her unable to ruthlessly destroy the flower, she would definitely let him know why the flower was so red. Actually, I'm bad with directions, but my instinct tells me that this place is very safe. Ji Yun's neck shrunk as he said, Wu. Ruoxia was being fierce to him again. However, he had been fierce to her a lot recently, and he had gotten used to it. Moreover, if Ruoxia didn't scold him fiercely every day, he wouldn't be used to it. I can't even see a tree, how can it be unsafe? Lung Ruoxia roared in anger. That's not for sure, but this place is definitely safe. Ji Yun mumbled to himself in a low voice, Wu. A place without trees might not be safe. If the enemy comes, there's no place to hide. Don't tell me you're thinking of staying here for another month? When Lung Ruoxia heard his words, she asked suspiciously, Hee, how could that be? A few drops of cold sweat hung on Ji Yun's forehead as he said with a silly smile. Actually, he really did have this thought. However, he didn't dare to say it out loud. Otherwise, Ruoxia would definitely be even angrier. If that's the case, let's leave this damn place quickly. Looking at the vast, bare desert in front of her, she really didn't want to stay a second longer. She wasn't a camel, how could she like this kind of place? Ruoxia, this place is really not bad. Ji Yun still wanted to persuade Lung Ruoxia, but when he saw the warning look in her eyes, he obediently shut his mouth and swallowed all the words he wanted to say. Not bad, you can stay here alone, Lung Ruoxia said in a bad mood. After she finished speaking, she ignored him. Her beautiful eyes scanned the surroundings, trying to find a suitable way out. As far as the eye could see, the yellow sand, coupled with the dark red sky, made people unable to feel happy. Don't. Ruoxia, you're thinking of abandoning me again. Wu. Why am I so pitiful? Ji Yun said pitifully. He even pretended to wipe away the tears at the corner of his eyes while he peeked at Lung Ruoxia's reaction from the corner of his eyes. Why are you so pitiful? Seeing him acting pitiful again, Lung Ruoxia was so angry that she almost cursed it out loud. Luckily, she managed to hold it in the end. Otherwise, it would affect her image. You always want to abandon me, Ji Yun said in an aggrieved voice. You're the one who's too unmotivated. Lung Ruoxue spoke the truth. This fellow was always thinking of hiding, and even said that he would lead the way for her. However, he was not going to take the right path at all. How infuriating. Immature, Ji Yun explained in a soft voice. Good. Do you know what practice is? Then do you want to stay here until the end of the competition? Lung Ruoxue said. This fellow's thoughts were too easy to guess. Even with her eyes closed, she knew what he was up to. No, I'll follow you wherever you go. I'm following you. When Ji Yun heard the danger in these words, he hurriedly expressed his position. Then come with me. Lung Ruoxue didn't waste any words and spoke directly. She knew very well that if she couldn't clear things up with him, this fellow would just be a pain in the ass. Oh, Ji Yun lowered his head and replied. Then he followed behind Lung Ruoxue like a little wife, walking at a steady pace. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue could not help but roar. Can you walk faster? If we move slowly, when will we be able to leave this desert? He really couldn't understand how there could be a desert here. It didn't match the appearance of this special space. I'm hungry, Ji Yun said as he walked. Seeing him in this state, Lung Ruoxue was roaring in her heart. Why did these words sound so familiar? Oh, that's right, this was what the little fire wolf always said. Ji Yun's current appearance was exactly the same as the little fire wolf. Could it be that they were brothers? Otherwise, how could they be so similar? She was very suspicious of this. Ruoxue, can you eat something before you leave? I'm about to starve to death. Ji Yun said with a bitter face. Don't worry, you won't starve to death even if you don't eat. Lung Ruoxue glanced at Ji Yun as she reminded him. Food is the most important thing to the people. If we don't eat, we'll definitely die. Ji Yun did not agree with Lung Ruoxue's words. You're a god now. Have you ever seen a god starve to death because they don't eat? Lung Ruoxue suppressed her anger and asked. I will. Ji Yun said. After he finished speaking, he hurriedly shifted a few steps to the side, afraid that Lung Ruoxue would beat him up in a fit of anger. This was because Ruoxue had used this to threaten him a few times before, and he was deeply aware of it. If you can, then why are you hiding? Lung Ruoxue could not help but laugh. There was nothing she could do to him. I'm afraid you'll beat me up. Ji Yun was very honest and told her everything that was on his mind. His clear eyes were also looking at Lung Ruoxue with vigilance. I won't beat you up. Lung Ruoxue smiled warmly as she promised. There was no sense of accomplishment in beating this fellow up. More importantly, she felt that even if she beat him up, it wouldn't solve any problems because this fellow was not a person with a normal mind. Really? Ji Yun asked, his eyes wide. Yes, come over. Lung Ruoxue coaxed. Then you're not allowed to lie to me. Ji Yun was still worried. I'm not lying to you. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head seriously once more. At this moment, Ji Yun's expression was like a puppy trying to please its master. How could she bear to do this? Then he'll come over. As Ji Yun spoke, he moved towards Lung Ruoxue's side. Just as he moved to her side, Lung Ruoxue grabbed him. In an instant, Ji Yun's face turned pale with fright. His entire body trembled like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind. Whoa. He seemed to have been tricked. Chapter 1840, A Feud 3. Why are you shaking? Lung Ruoxue could not help but laugh when she saw his reaction. You lied to me, Ji Yun said in an extremely aggrieved tone. His clear eyes began to water again. I'm not going to beat you up. Lung Ruoxue was speechless. Oh. Then why are you pulling me? Ji Yun didn't understand. From his point of view, Ruoxue was just angry out of embarrassment and wanted to vent her anger on him. You're walking too slowly. I can walk faster if I drag you along. After Lung Ruoxue finished speaking, she took out a rope and tied it around Ji Yun's wrist. She held the other end of the rope in her hand. There's no need to do this, right? Ji Yun said somewhat gloomily. If he kept him tied up like this, he would have bad thoughts. I need it. I'll give you two choices now. Either we part ways, or I'll take you with me. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. When she saw Ji Yun's face turn red and white, she was in a good mood and spoke in a much friendlier manner. It's better for you to hold on to me. Forced by Lung Ruoxia's tyrannical abuse, Ji-Yun had to admit defeat. That's a good girl. Lung Ruoxia extended her hand and patted Ji-Yun's head as if she was petting a puppy. She was just short of giving him a bone to chew on. Ji-Yun was praised by Ruoxia, but he couldn't bring himself to be happy. This wasn't what he had imagined. At the thought of this, Ji-Yun pouted and said with an aggrieved expression, Ruoxia, even though you can walk faster by holding me, I'm a man after all. You should at least give me some face, right? If my Ji clansmen were to see me like this, it would be very embarrassing. You're also afraid of losing face. Lung Ruoxia was very surprised, but she had no intention of letting him go. Instead, she continued, Don't worry. This place is so big that we might not be able to touch your Ji family. What if we run into them? Ji-Yun shamelessly asked. Then I can only say that you're too unlucky. Lung Ruoxia's words carried a hint of sympathy, but the expression on her face revealed that she was gloating over his misfortune. AI. After hearing Lung Ruoxia's words, no matter how stupid Ji-Yun was, he knew that Lung Ruoxia would never let go of him. Hence he could only accept his fate. Sob. He hoped that he would not meet anyone he knew. Otherwise he would really lose all his face. Seeing that he had accepted his fate, Lung Ruoxia smiled in satisfaction. Then, she pulled him towards the path that she had chosen. Even though that path was also covered by yellow sand, it was more pleasing to the eye than the other paths. Thus Lung Ruoxia pulled Ji-Yun along and walked over. The two of them walked on the soft yellow sand for an unknown amount of time. Just as they were about to walk out of the desert, they suddenly heard the sound of fighting not far away. Lung Ruoxia's face lit up with joy, while Ji-Yun's heart sank. What I'm afraid of is coming true. I didn't expect there to be a fight here. He stole a glance at Lung Ruoxia and prayed that she would not be a busybody, so that the two of them could quickly leave this place. Oh. It wasn't that he was timid. It was just that he was too lazy and didn't like to cause trouble. He was trying to find a reasonable excuse for himself. Let's take a look over there. Lung Ruoxia clearly did not hear the prayers in Ji-Yun's heart. Her tone was firm, and she did not allow Ji-Yun to refuse. Ruoxia, that's not a good place. Let's not go there. Let's go another way. Ji-Yun's heart trembled. Wu, what was he afraid of? He was clearly trying to avoid the participants, but he just had to bump into them here, and in the middle of a fight. If you don't want to exchange, well, go over there. If you don't, Lung Ruoxia said with a faint smile. However, she only said half of what she wanted to say. As for the other half, she believed that Ji-Yun would understand. It's not that I don't want to go, I'm just afraid of getting caught in the crossfire. They're having a good time, so it's not good for us to interfere, right? Ji-Yun said in a low voice, not very confident. Who said I'm going to interfere? I just want to take a look. What if it's someone I know? We'll be able to help out when the time comes. Lung Ruoxia spoke the truth. They could help each other here, and this was not against the rules of the competition. If it's not someone we know, then let's leave immediately, okay? Seeing that Lung Ruoxia had already made up her mind, Ji-Yun could only talk about the conditions. Good. As long as they don't attack us, we'll leave immediately. Lung Ruoxia agreed. Then let's go and take a look. With Lung Ruoxia's assurance, Ji-Yun was at ease. The two of them lowered their footsteps and cautiously walked towards the vicinity of the battle. Not far from them, there was a huge tree that blocked their view of the battle. Thus, Lung Ruoxia and Ji-Yun hid behind the tree and observed the battle. At this time, there were a total of 5 people in the chaotic battle. It was obvious that there were 2 groups of people because 2 of them were wearing the same clothes, and the other 3 were also wearing the same clothes. Ji Wu Ji Tao. Just as Lung Ruoxia was carefully observing the strength of these 2 groups, Ji-Yun, who was beside her, suddenly called out softly. When Lung Ruoxia heard this, she couldn't help but turn her head and look at him with slight surprise. You know them? I know 2 of them. The 2 in white are from the Ji family, and the other 3 in gray are the competitors from the Zhou family. Ji-Yun's expression was grave as he explained. His originally clear as water eyes grew even deeper. Since we're family, why don't you hurry up and help? Lung Ruoxia saw that although Ji-Yun's expression had turned serious, he did not move at all. She couldn't help but remind him. There's no hurry. Let's see how the situation goes first. Ji Yin had suddenly become calm and collected. This caused Lung Ruoxue to cast a sidelong glance at him. She had never thought that Ji Yin would have such a serious side to him. However, if Ji Yin knew what she was thinking, he would definitely be depressed to death. This was because in Lung Ruoxue's eyes, Ji Yin was not a normal person. Ji Yin, why aren't you wearing the clothes those two were wearing? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously after sizing up the two people in white. From the day she saw Ji Yin, he had always been dressed in black. Why do I have to be like them? Ji Yin said matter-of-factly. Ji Yin's words caused Lung Ruoxue to regret her previous thoughts. Ji Yin was still the same Ji Yin she knew. He had not changed at all. She must have been seeing things before. That's why she felt that Ji Yin had changed into a different person. What's wrong? Am I wrong? Ji Yin looked at Lung Ruoxue and asked cautiously. Right. You're right, but if you don't hurry up and save your clansmen, I'm afraid they'll have to stay here forever. From the corner of her eyes, Lung Ruoxue could see that the two men in white were showing signs of exhaustion. Their divine power was obviously running low as well, so she quickly reminded them. Oh, go now. When Ji Yin heard this, he immediately felt his heart heat up and spoke with a high-spirited manner. After he finished speaking, he requested Lung Ruoxue to untie the rope. Then he strode towards the few people who were fighting valiantly and in high spirits. All of you stop! Ji Yin shouted loudly as he walked to the side of the 5 people in the chaotic battle. When they heard this sudden voice, all 5 of them were stunned and involuntarily stopped fighting. However, when they saw that the person who stopped them was Ji Yin, the people on the gray-clothed man's side were immediately enraged. I was wondering who was acting like a big shot here. So you're a coward from the Ji family. The leading gray-robed man sneered. With that, the 3 other gray-robed men burst into laughter. Clearly, they did not place Ji Yin in their eyes. Zhou Kuan, you better watch your mouth. Shut up. Ji Wu reprimanded Zhou Kuan while Ji Yin stood by the side heartlessly, not taking Zhou Kuan's words seriously at all. What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? This Ji Yin is a famous coward of your Ji clan. And to think that your clansmen are still so protective of him. If he was a member of our Zhou clan, we would have kicked him out long ago. Our clan doesn't need such trash. Zhou Kuan's face was filled with undisguised contempt, while the 3 members of the Zhou family who were standing together laughed even more wildly. Shut your stinky mouth. Zhou Kuan, if I don't beat the 3 of you up until your parents can't recognize you, I'll write the word Ji backward. Ji Tao roared with a fiery temper. He was so angry that his eyes were bloodshot. If he could, he really wanted to rush up and bite the 3 people from the Zhou family a few times and trample them under his feet. After all, the Zhou family had been the Ji family's archenemy for many years. The 2 families had always been at each other's throats. Now that they had met here, it was impossible for them to let the other party go. Alright, then you can write the word Ji backwards. Brothers, if the word Ji is reversed, is it still a word? Ha ha ha. Zhou Kuan laughed smugly, while the other 2 members of the Zhou family also laughed wildly in cooperation. In their eyes, the 3 people from the Ji family were like arrows at the end of their flight, and were not worth mentioning at all. Ji Yin was a useless coward who had always been timid and afraid of trouble. On the other hand, Ji Wu and Ji Tao's physical strength and divine power had almost been exhausted by the 3 of them. They were not their opponents at all. Therefore, it could be said that Zhou Kuan and the other 2 people were completely fearless. Zhou Kuan, don't be smug too early. Ji Wu's handsome face was flushed red. He was also quite angry. So what if I'm proud? Our young master Kuan has the right to be proud. The person beside Zhou Kuan said with a fawning look on his face. That's right. If your Ji family is tactful, quickly send Ji Min to our Zhou family to be young Master Kun's concubine. If our 2 families can become in-laws, young Master Kun can take care of you in the future. As for that coward, don't even think about it. The other person also laughed wretchedly. Chapter 1841. You have to protect me. 1. The Ji Min this person was talking about was the eldest daughter of the Ji family. Not only was Ji Min beautiful, but she also had outstanding qualifications. She was also a leader among the younger generation of the Ji family. More importantly, she was Ji Yun's biological sister and doted on Ji Yun. It was precisely because of this that Zhou Kuan hated Ji Yun even more. Zhou Kuan couldn't understand why such a talented person would love a useless coward so much. He couldn't help but feel envy, jealousy, and hatred. In addition, he had once asked for Ji Min's hand in marriage but was rejected. As a result, as long as he found an opportunity, he would find trouble with the Ji family, especially with Ji Yun. Now that Ji Yun had taken the initiative to come to his door, he naturally wouldn't let go of this good opportunity. For the purpose of revenge and humiliation, Zhou Kuan, who originally intended to make Ji Min his wife, always mentioned that he wanted Ji Min to be his concubine when he mentioned this matter to outsiders or the Ji family. Every time he saw the Ji family's furious and uncontrollable expressions, Zhou Kuan could only describe it with one word: pleasure. Speaking of which, he was quite perverted in his heart. The reason why he was like this was because he had been rejected too many times. What made him even angrier was that Ji Min's reason for rejecting him was that she thought he was too rough. However, he knew that this was just an excuse. The real reason why Ji Min rejected him was all because of the useless coward Ji Yun. Because her younger brother needed protection. As an older sister, Ji Min naturally couldn't easily get married. However, that was only Zhou Kuan's personal opinion. Apart from Ji Yun, Ji Min was unwilling to marry Zhou Kuan because their families were at odds with each other. They were like enemies. With such a relationship, even if she had a good impression of Zhou Kuan, it was impossible for her to marry him. Moreover, she did not like Zhou Kuan, which was the most important reason. Upon hearing what the Zhou family member said, the short-tempered Ji Tao was indeed enraged. "Damn it, I dare you to say that again?" Ji Tao's face was red as he roared in anger. If it wasn't for Ji Wu holding him back, he would have already rushed forward and beat this guy up. "What's wrong? Quickly send Ji Min to young Master Kun's bed and make her his concubine. From now on, your Ji family will be under young Master Kun's protection. Your useless coward is unreliable, haha." The man provoked him fearlessly. As soon as he finished speaking, two more arrogant laughs were heard. Needless to say, they were Zhou Kuan and another member of the Zhou family. Zhou Kuan, who was standing at the side, felt extremely pleased when he saw his family members humiliating the Ji family members. Although the two of them had decent qualifications, they were both from the Zhou family's collateral branch. If they wanted to stand out in the Zhou family, they naturally had to please him. After all, he was not only a direct member of the Zhou family, but he might even become the future head of the Zhou family. Therefore, he was very satisfied with their flattery. He was also willing to give some guidance to such a discerning person. "You're looking for death." Ji Tao saw that the fellow really dared to speak, so he immediately broke free from Ji Wu's hand, and was about to rush forward to teach him a lesson. However, he was stopped by Ji Yun. "Stop!" Ji Yun shouted. His face was calm and emotionless, making it impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. When Ji Tao heard Ji Yun's words, he really did stop and turned to look at Ji Yun with a slightly aggrieved expression. "They humiliated Sister Min. We can't let them off," Ji Tao reminded. "I know, but we're all well-mannered people, so we really shouldn't act rashly. Let's sit down and have a good talk. Let's see how this matter can be resolved." After hearing his words, Zhou Kuan and the other two could not help but laugh wildly again. Watch. This was the guy that the Ji family had high hopes for. He was just so useless. He never dared to have a direct conflict with others. He always wanted to be the peacemaker and reason with others. In the divine realm, the strong were respected. One's fist was the only way to speak. Whoever had the tougher fist would naturally have the greater right to speak. Someone like Ji Yun was simply an anomaly. Zhou Kuan thought to himself in disdain. "What's so funny? Am I wrong?" Ji Yun said with a confused expression. He was so innocent that he didn't seem to know what they were laughing about. "Right, my ass. Who wants to sit down and chat with you? It's embarrassing for us to sit with you." Zhou Kuan looked down on Ji Yun at all, but he was extremely jealous of how much Ji Yun was doted on in the Ji family. Therefore, he would rather be beaten to death than sit down and talk with Ji Yun. Was that what a man should do? "Young master, don't bother with this kind of uncouth person. It's only disgracing our Ji family by talking to him. At this moment, Ji Wu, who was standing beside Ji Yun, spoke out. From his tone, it seemed as if he was quite doting on Ji Yun. That's right, this kind of person doesn't deserve to live in this world. ITLL only lower our class if we lower ourselves to their level. Ji Tao, who had calmed down, was afraid that Ji Yun's self-esteem would be hurt, so he quickly comforted him. At this moment, he could not care about the dispute with the Zhou family. Fuck. What did you say? Ji Wu and Ji Tao's words made Zhou Kuan so angry that he roared loudly. He couldn't bear it anymore. He couldn't understand what Ji Yun had done to deserve the protection of the Ji family. It must be known that a useless coward like Ji Yun would belong to the abandoned category in any clan. However, Ji Yun was the exact opposite. Not only was he loved by the elders of his family, but his fellow clansmen of the same generation also took extra care of him. If anyone were to see how the fellow clansmen of the Ji clan took care of Ji Yun, they would probably go crazy. At least he was going crazy. We said you're trash and don't deserve to live in this world. Ji Tao said with a faint smile. He's the trash, okay? Zhou Kuan pointed at Ji Yun angrily and roared. Fuck. Was there any justice left in this world? The biggest piece of trash was right in front of them, but the Ji family turned a blind eye to it. Our young master is 100 times stronger than you. You don't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as him. He's not even worthy of carrying his shoes. Ji Tao also said in disdain. Yes, young Master Kuan, you are not even qualified to be a servant in our Ji family. The first and foremost rule of our Ji family's servants is loyalty. You can't. Ji Wu said in a matter-of-fact manner. Ji Yun, on the other hand, still had a confused look on his face, as if he couldn't understand what they were talking about. Lung Ruoxue, who was hiding behind a giant tree, heard the conversation between the two parties. She then looked at Ji Yun's reaction and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Isn't this Ji Yun's reaction a little too slow? However, his temper was really good and he was also patient. She was already pointing at him and scolding him, but he still acted as if nothing had happened. She did not know what he was thinking. Although she was a little curious, she did not let Qingju read Ji Yun's mind. After all, it was better to keep some secrets. When she thought of this, she decided to continue closing her eyes. She would only reveal herself when she was needed. Right now, she only hoped that Ji Yun would give her some strength so that no one could bully him. Chapter 1842. You have to protect me too. At the same time, Zhou Kuan, who heard Ji Wu's words, became even more furious. Fuck. I dare you to say that again? Zhou Kuan pointed at Ji Wu and couldn't help but wonder why the Ji family was so annoying. Although the two families had been enemies for generations, most of the time, they could still live in peace. After all, even if the two families were like fire and water, they couldn't fight each other every day. Most of the things they did were to drag each other down. However, for some reason, whenever he saw Ji Yun, he couldn't control his temper and wanted to get angry. I said you're not even fit to be a servant in our Ji family. Do you hear me now? Ji Wu repeated helplessly. He looked at Zhou Kuan with eyes full of sympathy, as if he was saying, poor fellow, you can't understand human language. You're looking for death. Zhou Kuan narrowed his eyes and said in an unfriendly tone, You're wrong, I haven't lived long enough. Why would you seek death? Ji Wu disagreed with Zhou Kuan's words. However, in the next second, Zhou Kuan attacked Ji Wu at lightning speed. In an instant, a palm wind with a blue light appeared in front of Ji Wu. Ji Wu hurriedly dodged, but the palm wind still brushed past his body and left a deep bloody mark on his arm. A trace of red blood flowed down from the wound. After gently wiping the blood off his arm, Ji Wu squinted his eyes and looked at Zhou Kuan. This fellow's strength was already above theirs, and Zhou Kuan was a typical nouveau riche. Therefore, he had an unimaginable number of medicinal pills on him. This also made them, who were originally slightly weaker, have no advantage at all. Unless a miracle appeared now, they were afraid that they would not be able to defeat Zhou Kuan. What should they do? He knew very well that even if he and Ji Tao were to die here, nothing could happen to Ji Yun. After all, Ji Yun was the hope of all the members of the Ji family. However, under Zhou Kun's covetous gaze, It would not be easy for them to protect Ji Yun. At this moment, his mind turned and countless plans formed in his mind, but they were all rejected because none of them was the best solution for them at this time. Young master, Ji Tao and I will think of a way to hold Zhou Kun back later. You should run quickly and find a good place to hide. Don't let them find you, understand? Ji Wu transmitted his voice to Ji Yun, as if he was coaxing a child. At this moment, they could only stake everything on this method. Although the success rate of this method was very low, they still had to try. I'm here to help you, why are you making me run? I'll lose a lot of face like this. Ji Yun said unhappily. Hiding was one thing, but backing out at the last minute was another. Furthermore, running away in front of the Zhou family made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Young master, how can you be so calculative now? Staying alive is the most important thing, be good. When we start fighting, you should run immediately. Ji Wu continued to coax Ji Yun. Although he was helpless against Ji Yun's stubbornness, he still had to coax him away. No need to run, I have help. A faint smile appeared on Ji Yun's lips as he confidently replied. Where did he get help from? Ji Wu was astonished. I met her here. We've always been traveling together. Ji Yun transmitted his voice to Ji Wu in a somewhat sunder manner. Is he reliable? Ji Wu was a bit worried. He knew very well how reclusive Ji Yun was, but he didn't expect that Ji Yun would actually make friends here. Don't worry, I'm absolutely reliable. Ji Yun solemnly promised. Will he be willing to help us? If he helps us, he will offend the Zhou family, and the Zhou family will not let him off. Ji Wu asked worriedly. He wasn't as open-minded as Ji Yun. Although the Zhou family couldn't be compared to the 8 great divine regions, it was still one of the top powers among the many top powers. Anyone who came to participate in the elite competition had their own family. It was very difficult for others to be willing to offend another family for the sake of another family. Unless the 2 families were in an alliance, who would be willing to help you so easily? Other than that, once he owed someone a favor here, he would have to pay a huge price to pay it back. Therefore, unless he had no other choice, he was not willing to ask for help. Don't worry, she'll definitely be willing to help us. Although she looks a little fierce, after getting along with her for a few days, I know that she's just a person with a sharp mouth but a soft heart. She won't leave us in the lurch. Ji Yun said with absolute certainty. Seeing how confident Ji Yun was, Ji Wu didn't think much of the friend he spoke of. However, he didn't want to pour cold water on Ji Yun's head, for fear of hurting his self-esteem. So he could only suppress the thoughts in his heart and not attack him. Seeing that Ji Wu didn't seem to believe him, Ji Yun decided to go all out and shout at the top of his voice. Ruoxia! Someone is bullying me! Wu Wu! Seeing Ji Yun's reaction, Ji Wu and Ji Tao's foreheads couldn't help but be filled with black lines. How could this be possible? Would that person be angry? If it were them, they would definitely regret befriending Ji Yun. Fortunately, they were already used to it. At this moment, Lung Ruoxia, who was hiding behind a tree and watching the commotion, heard Ji Yun calling out to her. She was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. Damn it, previously he refused to come here no matter what. Now he's calling out to me at the top of his voice. What the hell is going on? Lung Ruoxia, who was a little angry, made up her mind that she could not go out like this. Thus she ignored Ji Yun's cry. Yo, you actually have a helper. I really couldn't tell that you had this kind of ability. Zhou Kun, who heard Ji Yun's shout, did not get angry, which was rare. He did not attack either. Instead, he started teasing him. However, seeing that the person Ji Yun called out to did not respond for a long time, Zhou Kun sneered and said, It seems that your gang is quite timid, like a tortoise who doesn't dare to show his head. You're the coward, your whole family is a coward. Upon hearing that Zhou Kun had the audacity to scold Ruoxia, Ji Yun was immediately enraged. Wah! A coward actually dared to curse. Is the sky going to rain red? Upon hearing Ji Yun's scolding, Zhou Kun laughed instead of getting angry. Seeing how angry Ji Yun was, Ji Wu and Ji Tao widened their eyes in disbelief. This was truly too rare. So what if I scold you? I'm going to beat you up. Ji Yun shouted. He was furious, and the consequences would be severe. Zhou Kun and the others, as well as Ji Wu and Ji Tao, were all stunned. They looked at Ji Yin in disbelief. What are you looking at? I'm talking about you. Ji Yin pointed at Zhou Kuan and reprimanded him in an unusual manner. Coward. All right. Your temper is rising. Zhou Kuan chuckled with a faint smile and looked at Ji Yin with an unfriendly gaze. After he finished speaking, he approached Ji Yin step by step. Seeing this, Ji Yin's face was filled with fear as he shouted, "What do you want to do? I'm warning you, don't you dare mess around. Otherwise, my comrades will not let you off." He had once again used Lung Ruoxue as a shield. When Lung Ruoxue, who was behind the tree, heard his words, she felt like strangling him. Chapter 1843. You have to protect me 3. That damn Ji Yin. Lung Ruoxue secretly gritted her teeth and added another crime to Ji Yin's name. Ji Wu and Ji Tao, who were standing guard beside Ji Yin, did not know whether to laugh or cry when they heard that Ji Yin had actually ignored their existence and directly threatened Zhou Kuan with the companion that he had never met before. Although the two of them were not as powerful as Zhou Kuan, they were still much stronger than the other two people around Zhou Kuan, right? How could Ji Yin so blatantly ignore the two of them? This caused the two of them to feel extremely disgruntled. Now they were even more curious about the companions that Ji Yin spoke of. Oh really? Why don't you ask him to come out? I'd like to see who would have the guts to go against our Zhou family so openly. Ji Yin's words made Zhou Kuan feel even more smug. Moreover, he was very certain that Ji Yin was lying to him. The person he mentioned was not there at all. Otherwise, why had that person not appeared all this while? Ruoxue, help me. Someone is bullying me. Zhou Kun's words made Ji Yin scream again. This time, his voice was even more hoarse and exhausted than the previous time. It sounded as if he had really been tortured miserably by someone. Unfortunately, he was now unscathed, and Zhou Kuan teased him like he was teasing a clown. When she heard Ji Yin's shouts, Lung Ruoxue could no longer bear it, and walked out from behind the tree. She could tell that if she was not called out, Ji Yin would definitely not let this matter rest. The moment Lung Ruoxue came out, Ji Yin looked as if he had seen his savior. His face was full of grievance and his clear eyes were filled with tears. He pitifully ran to Lung Ruoxue, wanting to throw himself into her arms and cry. Unfortunately, Lung Ruoxue nimbly dodged him. Furthermore, when he wanted to pounce on Lung Ruoxue again, he unfortunately caught a glimpse of Lung Ruoxue's warning gaze. He could only change his pounce to a pull, and the first thing he did was naturally Lung Ruoxue's sleeve. When Lung Ruoxue saw Ji Yin's pitiful look, more and more black lines appeared on her forehead. Her beautiful face turned even uglier. She heaved a heavy sigh. She sighed in her heart. Ji Yin. Did he have to be so exaggerated? She didn't even touch a single strand of his hair, alright? Although she had said some words to provoke him, Ji Yin didn't seem to be too angry. It seemed like he was already used to it. However, Ji Yin's current state, Lung Ruoxue didn't know what to say. She sized up Ji Yin with a hint of surprise on her face. Was this the Ji Yin who had promised to protect her? Why did he ask her to protect him instead? Ruoxue, don't look at me like that. Oh, be shy. Seeing Lung Ruoxue's eyes fixed on him, Ji Yin said softly. His handsome face was also dyed with a faint pink. Lung Ruoxue was speechless. After a long while she said, "Then you can slowly be shy. Ruoxue, now is not the time to be shy. Someone is going to bully me. You have to protect me." Ji Yin pitifully replied after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. "I remember you said you would protect me." Lung Ruoxue reminded him with a calm tone. "Of course I will protect you, but you have to protect me first. They're too fierce, I'm scared." Ji Yin emphasized as he looked at Lung Ruoxue expectantly. His eyes were as bright as obsidian, and as clear as a puppy trying to please its master. He was innocent and pure. "I'm afraid too, what should I do?" Lung Ruoxue looked at Ji Yin with an innocent expression. "Aha. Beauty, don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. Although you're Ji Yin's friend, I, Master Kuan, have always known to have tender and protective feelings for women. Don't worry. I'll love you well." Before Ji Yin could answer Lung Ruoxue's question, Zhou Kuan interrupted impatiently. "Fuck. This beauty was really too beautiful, so beautiful that it was unbelievable. She was so beautiful that even the flowers that were competing for beauty lost their color. Compared to the beauty in front of him, Ji-min and the others had long been thrown to the back of his mind. Originally, he wanted to get Ji-min because she was pretty and her family background was good enough for him. However, now that he had met Lung Ruoxue, Ji-min no longer piqued his interest. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue was the only person in Zhou Kun's heart and eyes. Not only Zhou Kun, but Ji Wu and Ji Tao's eyes also lit up the moment they saw Lung Ruoxue. They were stunned. However, they were puzzled as to how Ji Yin had gotten to know such a beautiful woman. His luck was indeed invincible. What if I say that I don't need your love? Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly, like a flower in spring that bloomed, almost blinding everyone's eyes. Women. It's your honor that our young master Kun has taken a liking to you. If you know what's good for you, then obediently come into our young master Kun's arms and be his concubine. I guarantee that you'll live a good life. Without waiting for Zhou Kun's reaction, one of his lackeys started reprimanding Lung Ruoxue in an attempt to please her. Moreover, he even arranged an identity for her and made her Zhou Kun's concubine. Idiot! How could such a beautiful young lady be a concubine? No matter what, she should be an equal wife. Zhou Kun was very displeased with the lackey's words. At the same time, he was also afraid that Lung Ruoxue would be angry. After all, as long as a woman was beautiful, unless they had no other choice, they would not be willing to be someone else's concubine. More importantly, the participants who were able to participate in the elite competition all had their own families. What if they made a fool of themselves by saying such words before they had even figured out Lung Ruoxue's background? Following that, he smiled and fawned over Lung Ruoxue. Hee hee. Miss, please don't listen to his nonsense. He's stupid. You don't know how to speak, so please forgive me if I've offended you. Zhou Kun pretended to be a gentleman, a model of an elegant and graceful young master. However, Ji Wu and Ji Tao scoffed at his pretense. Why are you acting? Can you still put on an act? This is what you're good at. Ji Tao said with a smile. It seemed that Zhou Kun had taken a liking to this woman. In fact, this was also good. At least, in this way, he would not have any ideas about sister men. However, it seemed that he would be letting down the lady who had been dragged into the water by Ji Yun. You shut up. This is a matter between me and this young lady. And it has nothing to do with your Ji family. You can stand aside. Zhou Kun roared at Ji Tao furiously. He regretted not killing the three of them just now. If that was the case, there wouldn't be an eyesore between him and Lung Ruoxue. This young lady is our young master's friend. How could she not be related to our Ji family? Ji Wu reminded with a smile. Humph. Killing you guys will have nothing to do with you. A hint of ruthlessness flashed in Zhou Kun's eyes as he said fiercely. If you have the ability, then kill me. Ji Tao said unhappily. Anyway, it was already like this. As the saying goes, a dead pig is not afraid of boiling water, so they really were not afraid. Don't think that I won't dare to kill you. Zhou Kun narrowed his eyes and said coldly. You come and kill me. Who's afraid of you? Ji Tao taunted. It was allowed to kill people here. If the other party dared to kill them, he would naturally have to be aware that he would be killed by others. Moreover, the Ji family was not the only enemy of the Zhou family. Are you guys done quarreling? At this moment, Lung Ruoxue, who had been neglected, asked speechlessly as she watched the two groups of people quarreling in full swing. She really had to hand it to these people. They did not even ask for her opinion, and just started quarreling on their own. Furthermore, they took it for granted. We're not quarreling, we're just trying to reason. Upon hearing that Lung Ruoxue seemed to be a little displeased, Zhou Kun quickly smiled and said gently. When Lung Ruoxue heard these words, she could not help but wipe the cold sweat off her forehead. She thought to herself, this fellow is actually being reasonable now? Could it be that he wanted to follow in Ji Yun's footsteps? She sized Zhou Kun up carefully. Although he looked decent, he did not have Ji Yun's innate potential to be the submissive one. The expression on his face was a little fierce, making it difficult for people to pity him. She concluded, it would be strange if they didn't quarrel. We were fighting just now, and we almost lost our lives. Ji Tao exposed Zhou Kun's lie rudely. He was not a member of the Zhou family, so he naturally did not have to give Zhou Kun any face. Moreover, this young lady was not a fool. She would not lie to him. I saw it. Lung Ruoxue nodded affirmatively. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Zhou Kun naturally could not deny it, and could only look at her awkwardly with a silly smile. Then Lung Ruoxue changed the topic and said, "Did you just say that you want me to be your equal wife?" When she heard this before, she wanted to express her opinion, but unfortunately, he didn't give her a chance. Now that the initiative was in her hands, she had to ask. A common wife is also a concubine. Ji Tao looked at Zhou Kun with a faint smile and reminded him. Seeing that Ji Tao had ruined his plan, Zhou Kun gritted his teeth in hatred. However, in order to leave a good impression on Lung Ruoxue, he held back his anger. After he got this beauty, he would settle the score with the 3G family members. Zhou Kun's wishful thinking was pretty good, but unfortunately, Lung Ruoxue would never let him have his way. After hearing Ji Tao's words, Lung Ruoxue nodded in agreement. That's right, although your idea is acceptable, it's a pity that it's a bit whimsical to think about me. This young miss will not be someone's equal wife, and will not be someone's concubine, so you should give up on that idea. Lung Ruoxue's words made Zhou Kun's 2 lackeys feel a little embarrassed and angry. However, before the 2 of them could flare up, they were stopped by Zhou Kun's gaze. Chapter 1844. You can only leave with me. 1. Although Zhou Kun also hated Lung Ruoxue's words, she was the woman he had taken a fancy to. Apart from him, he would not allow anyone else to criticize his woman. Moreover, he had yet to enter the Bowtie's eyes, so he naturally could not let the beauty hate him. Therefore, even if he hated Lung Ruoxue for not knowing how to appreciate his kindness, it was not the time to be a man. The most important thing now was to win the Bowtie's heart. After he got this beauty, he would teach her the rules. He could only endure it for now. At the thought of this, he suppressed the hatred in his heart, and smiled at Lung Ruoxue. Young Lattice's words are reasonable. I was rude. May I know young Lattice's name? And which clan did he belong to? This one is willing to send someone to formally propose marriage, and take young miss as my main wife. After Zhou Kun said that, he was secretly pleased with himself. He knew that there was a lot of information contained in his words, and once the other party answered him, he would be clear about her name, family, location, and other information. As for whether he would marry the beauty as his wife, it was not up to him alone. If the Bowtie's family background was comparable to his, it would naturally be no problem for him to marry her as his wife. Otherwise, he could only say that he was sorry and give her an equal wife at most. However, this could only be his own wishful thinking. Who asked him to only think about what he would do when the time came, and not what Lung Ruoxue would do? Putting aside the fact that Lung Ruoxue would never agree to his request, even if she did, he would not be able to marry her. My surname is Lung. As for the marriage proposal, there's no need for it. I already have a fiancé. After hearing Zhou Kun's words, Lung Ruoxue was speechless for a long time before she said, You have a fiancé? Who is it? Upon hearing that, Zhou Kun was instantly infuriated. Fuck. How could the woman he had his eyes on belong to someone else? He would never allow this to happen. The woman in front of him had been his possession since the first time he saw her. Now he heard her say that she was taken. This was a fact that he could not accept. Who's related to you? Lung Ruoxue asked in surprise. Her beautiful face was still filled with confusion. Of course it's related. You're the woman I like. How can you have a fiancé? I'm the only man you can have. I've decided, I'm going to fight him one-on-one. Tell him to come to me. Zhou Kun didn't want to lose and issued the challenge first. When Lung Ruoxue heard Zhou Kun's unreasonable and self-righteous words, she was speechless and did not know what to say. Why is this fellow so? He seemed to be even weirder than Ji Yun. He didn't even understand the monster's situation, and wanted to challenge the monster one-on-one. Wasn't this courting death? Moreover, she was very sure that if Zhou Kun really dared to come to her door, the demon would definitely not let him have an easy time. What's wrong? You don't dare to tell me? Was he afraid that his brother would beat him up? Don't worry for your sake, I'll let him live, but the two of you must never see each other again. Otherwise, if I find out, I won't let you two go. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue did not respond for a long time, Zhou Kuren thought that she was afraid. Hence, he continued to pursue the matter. This time, Lung Ruoxue was even more speechless. She didn't know how to describe her current feelings. In short, it was hard to describe them in a few words. He did not expect that he would encounter such a rare talent one after another in the few days he had been here. Moreover, Zhou Kuren seemed to be even better than Ji Yun. At least, Ji Yun was not annoying, but Zhou Kuren was a completely different person. Lung Ruoxue remained silent, but Ji Tao, who was not far away, could not help but burst into laughter after hearing Zhou Kun's words. Ha ha ha. Toad from the Zhou family, I really have to give it to you. Is there anyone as self-righteous as you? Nothing happened? Who do you think you are to let her cut off all contact with her fiancé? Don't tell me that all the women in the world like you? If that's what you're thinking, then I suggest you commit suicide and reincarnate as a top-grade crystal. I believe that everyone will like you then. The more Ji Tao spoke, the more he felt that his words made sense, and he laughed even more wantonly. As for Zhou Kuren, after hearing Ji Tao's ridicule, he was so angry that his face turned red and white. The veins on his forehead were throbbing, and there was a faint flame dancing in the depths of his eyes. That damned Ji Tao. She actually dared to humiliate him like this. Uncle can tolerate it, but Aunt can't. Zhou Kuren was filled with hatred in his heart. He clenched his fists tightly, but he was thinking about whether he should teach Ji Tao a lesson. Teach him a lesson. At the same time, he was afraid that Lung Ruoxue would have a bad impression of him, as though he was a bully who relied on his strength. However, he was going to let Ji Tao off just like that? He felt indignant. Sigh. He was so conflicted. Miss Lung, I'm very sincere towards you. After enduring silently for a long while, Zhou Kuren decided to let Ji Tao off first. His main priority was to capture Lung Ruoxue. As for the 3G family's boys, they would not be able to escape sooner or later. However, it would be a grave sin to scare the beauty away. Moreover, the beauty had a fiancé of unknown origins, who was his greatest enemy. At this moment, he had already treated the demon as his love rival, but the demon was still unaware of it. Thank you for your sincerity, but I'm really not interested in you. Lung Ruoxue sighed and said straightforwardly, Woman, you're really asking for it the hard way. Our young master Kuren has already said so, and you're still trying to be arrogant? Seeing that Zhou Kuren couldn't handle the woman, one of his lackeys couldn't help but roar. He really felt bad for young Master Kuren. When had young Master Kuren ever been so submissive to a woman? This woman really doesn't know what's good for her. To think that young Master Kuren still indulges her so much. To be honest, even I can't bear to watch this anymore. So what if she was beautiful? There were many beautiful women in the divine realm. Even though this woman was prettier than the average woman, young Master Kuren was not lacking in women. Hence, he could not understand why young Master Kuren was so forgiving towards this woman. After all, if it was any other woman who dared to treat young Master Kuren like this, young Master Kuren would have already thought of a way to deal with her. If he could not deal with her, he would have to first ruin her reputation. Otherwise, it would be difficult to vent his hatred. Why doesn't anyone believe the truth these days? Lung Ruoxue mumbled to herself with an aggrieved expression after hearing the lackey's words. Poochie. A soft chuckle was heard. Then the owner of the chuckle, Ji Yun, said with a fawning expression, Ruoxue, I believe you. Be good. Lung Ruoxue helplessly patted Ji Yun's head and coaxed him. Ji Yun, who was being patted on the head, squinted his eyes in enjoyment, looking more and more like a little beast. Damn it, who allowed you to touch him? Just as Lung Ruoxue and Ji Yun were enjoying each other's caresses, an earth-shattering roar resounded through the air, following which, Lung Ruoxue saw a fellow who was so angry that his entire body was on fire. He glared fiercely at her hand that was gently caressing Ji Yun's head. Ji Yun, on the other hand, shivered and quickly hid behind Lung Ruoxue in fear. Ruoxue, protect me, Ji Yun fearfully said, the expression on his handsome little face growing more and more frightened. Chapter 1845. You can only come with me too, AI. Lung Ruoxue could only sigh when she saw Ji Yun running away faster than a rabbit. Actually, she really wanted to say, kiss. You're a man. Damn it. What kind of man is he if he hides behind a woman? Is this all you're capable of as the young master of the Ji family? I really don't understand why those old fogies of the Ji family would let you be the young master. Aren't they afraid that you'll destroy the Ji family? Zhou Kuan, who was furious, said in exasperation. He really didn't know what the Ji family's judgment was. They actually chose a coward to be the young master. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel sour in his heart. What does that have to do with you? Our Ji family is willing to let Ji Yun be the young master. What can you do? Go and catch rats elsewhere. We have cats in the Ji family. We don't need you. Upon hearing Zhou Kun's words, Ji Tao said in an unpleasant tone. Hee. After listening to Ji Tao's words, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but laugh. This member of the Ji family was quite interesting. He actually said that Zhou Kuan was a busybody. However, Zhou Kuan was indeed a busybody. When he saw Lung Ruoxue laughing, Zhou Kuan, who was about to get angry, was immediately silenced by her beautiful smile. He could only look at Lung Ruoxue in a daze. At this moment, Ji Yun and Ji Tao were nothing in his eyes. His eyes that were spitting fire only had Lung Ruoxue's smile. Ruoxue, he seems to be a little silly. Ji Yun, who was hiding behind Lung Ruoxue, could not help but whisper when he saw that Zhou Kuan, who was still furious a moment ago, was now standing still and smiling foolishly. You're the one who's stupid. Lung Ruoxue lightly patted Ji Yun's head, her beautiful face filled with helplessness. I'm not stupid. Lung Ruoxue's words made Ji Yun so aggrieved that he was on the verge of tears. Tears welled up in his clear eyes as he looked at Lung Ruoxue pitifully. I'll teach you a lesson if you dare to cry. Lung Ruoxue shot a glance at Ji Yun as she warned him. I don't want to cry. I can't help it. You're bullying me. Wu, Ji Yun sobbed. Tears welled up in his eyes, but they refused to fall. When did I bully you? Lung Ruoxue gritted her teeth and asked. Why did this fellow like to say that others bullied him so much? Could it be that he had a face that attracted hatred? You said I'm stupid, but you won't let me cry. Ji Yun's mouth twitched. He felt extremely wronged. Hearing Ji Yun's words, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but wipe away the cold sweat on her forehead. She then sneaked a glance at Ji Wu and Ji Tao. However, she saw that the two of them were as calm as ever, as if they were used to it. She immediately felt that she was making a big fuss out of nothing. She should have known about Ji Yun's character long ago, right? Why bother with him? AI. She realized that the number of sighs she had made in the past few days was more than the number of sighs she had made in a year. Alright, you're not stupid. Cry if you want to. Lung Ruoxue said helplessly. Hee. Ruoxue, you're the best. Ji Yun was as happy as a child who had received candy. Be good. Go play by the side. I have some serious business to discuss with them. Lung Ruoxue coaxed Ji Yun as she pointed at Ji Wu and Ji Tao. What business? Can't I listen? Actually, I can give you guys some advice. When Ji Yun heard that he had been excluded, he said dejectedly. He also wanted to participate in the official business. Serious business is boring. You won't like it. Go play by the side. Good girl. Be good and I'll give you some candy later. Lung Ruoxue was now completely treating Ji Yun as a little child. Then you have to give me lots and lots of candy. Otherwise, I'll stay here. Ji Yun started to talk about his conditions. Recently, Ruoxue had been using candy to coax him, and he really liked the candy. No problem. Lung Ruoxue nodded in agreement. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Ji Yun went to the side to wait. When Ji Wu and Ji Tao saw Ji Yun's reaction, they couldn't help but twitch their lips. What kind of situation was this? When did Ji Yun become so easy to talk to? A few pieces of candy? It must be known that although Ji Yun looked silly and innocent, he was publicly acknowledged as the smartest member of the Ji clan. But now what had Ji Yun done? The beauty only gave him a few pieces of candy and he was coaxed to the side. This was too embarrassing. However, they believed that Ji Yun had his own reasons for doing so. Out of their trust in Ji Yun, they naturally did not ask too much less interfere with Ji Yun's thoughts and decisions. After sending Ji Yun away, Lung Ruoxue walked towards Ji Tao and Ji Wu without a change in her expression and said softly, "What are you going to do? Should we continue fighting them, or temporarily stop? If we fight, I'm afraid we're not their match right now. Moreover, we're injured. But will they agree to stop temporarily?" Ji Wu calmly pondered for a moment before saying, "In fact, it's best not to fight now. After all, although the Ji and Zhou families have a grudge, it's all on the surface. After leaving this place, it won't be too late to settle the score between them. But this place is different. There are many unknown factors here. Moreover, we've only been here for less than 10 days. If we lose our men now, what will we do for the remaining days?" Of course, this was only his own thoughts. The Zhou family might not think the same as him. "Well, no, if we ask." Lung Ruoxue smiled as she reminded him. "If we ask, he definitely won't agree." Ji Wu said helplessly. He then looked at Lung Ruoxue with anticipation. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she wiped the cold sweat off her forehead. She could tell that the Ji family was using her as free labor. But forget it. For the sake of Ji Yun, she would not argue with them. After thinking about it, Lung Ruoxue turned around and walked to Zhou Kun's side. She said, "Young Master Zhou, can we temporarily stop the battle? If you want to fight, you can do it outside. Cease fire? All right. However, I have a condition." Upon hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Zhou Kun suddenly snapped back to reality. He looked at Lung Ruoxue, who was so close to him, and his heart itched even more. Beautiful. She's so beautiful. This is a true beauty. After meeting Lung Ruoxue, he deeply felt that all the so-called beauties he had seen in the past had all become ordinary and not worth mentioning. What condition? Lung Ruoxue frowned and asked. "You have to tell me who your fiancé is, and let him fight me one-on-one. If I win, you'll be mine." Zhou Kun boasted shamelessly. When they heard his conditions, Ji Wu and Ji Tao were furious. This was clearly taking advantage of him. In fact, they were not afraid of Zhou Kun and the others. They just felt that it was more important to preserve their strength for the time being. After all, the two families had been enemies for a long time, and there was no need to fight to the death here. Wouldn't that benefit others? However, before the two of them could reject Zhou Kun's conditions, Lung Ruoxue agreed first. "No problem. But what if you lose?" Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but ask. In her heart, she was thinking, if this evildoer knew that someone had designs on her, he would probably want to beat them up, right? Now that this person had taken the initiative to come to her door, if she didn't take it on behalf of the demon might drink it up in jealousy after finding out. Chapter 1846. You can only leave with me 3. This young master won't lose. Zhou Kun said confidently. All right then. Apart from being speechless, Lung Ruoxue felt a sense of powerlessness. She really could not understand where this person got his confidence from. "Zhou Kun, although you're very confident, I think it's better to say the ugly words first. What are you going to do if you lose?" Ji Tao couldn't bear to see Zhou Kun's smug look, so he said, hoping that the world would be in chaos. "I said I won't lose. You don't understand what I'm saying, right?" Ji Tao's words made Zhou Kun furious. Why is Ji Tao so annoying? He was everywhere. Let's not talk about losing first. The key is that if you lose, you'll have to pay a price, right? After all, if he lost, he would have to give up his fiancée. With such a huge price, it didn't seem right if he didn't come up with something decent, right? Don't think that your Zhou family can use your power to bully others. We all saw it. Ji Tao provoked. If this lord loses, this lord's life will be given to him. That should be fine, right? Zhou Kun couldn't help but be agitated and said angrily, "You don't have any proof. What if you lose and go back on your word?" Ji Tao said with a worried look. "I said I won't go back on my word, so I won't go back on my word." Zhou Kun gritted his teeth and said with hatred in his heart, "Ji Tao is really despicable. Why don't you write a receipt?" Lung Ruoxue suggested with a smile. "Even you don't believe me?" Zhou Kun said with a bitter face and an aggrieved expression. "Should I believe you? I don't even know you." Lung Ruoxue asked in surprise. From his tone, It sounded like he was acting coquettishly. Lung Ruoxua shuddered and quickly threw this thought out of her mind. You. Zhou Kuan was so angry that he was at a loss for words. After a long while he gritted his teeth and said, Good. I'll write an agreement. You can't write a written pledge. That thing's binding power is too low. You should just make an oath. Ji Tao reminded. Zhou Kun's face turned livid with anger after hearing Ji Tao's words. Fuck. She actually wanted him to make an oath? Could that thing be casually distributed? Although Zhou Kuan had just promised to hand his life over to the other party if he lost, he was extremely unwilling to make him swear an oath. This was also for the sake of prevention. After all, they were from aristocratic families and knew what they could and couldn't do. However, seeing that Lung Ruoxua seemed to agree with this idea, Zhou Kuan felt that he was in a difficult position. If he were to reject her, he was afraid that Lung Ruoxua would dislike him even more. Forget it. Let's not make things difficult for young Master Zhou. Oaths really can't be made randomly. Let's just write a receipt. After a long while, Lung Ruoxua said in an understanding manner when she saw Zhou Kun's constipated look. In fact, she was thinking that with Zhou Kun's devilish behavior, the success rate of him reneging on his debt would not be high. Therefore, she was not afraid that Zhou Kuan would have any other thoughts. The top priority was to stabilize Zhou Kuan first. In fact, if they were to really fight, she was really not afraid of Zhou Kuan. However, she did not want to appear too outrageous. After all, their every move could be seen clearly by the outside world. She did not want to expose all her trump cards to the eyes of others. Therefore, unless she had no other choice, she did not want to make a move easily. If she really did make a move, she would definitely hide her strength. Good. I'll write you an IOU. Lung Ruoxua's words made Zhou Kuan feel more at ease. He was still thinking to himself happily, it seems that the beauty is not completely indifferent to me. Look. She was so considerate to him. Fortunately, Lung Ruoxua was unaware of Zhou Kun's thoughts. Otherwise, she would have been depressed to death. She was not being considerate towards Zhou Kuan, but she felt that there was no need to do so. After all, it was impossible for Zhou Kuan to renege on his debt. Zhou Kuan wrote the IOU very quickly. After he was done, he immediately handed it to Lung Ruoxua. Then he stared at her without taking his eyes off her. And he was daydreaming in his heart. As long as he thought about how this unparalleled beauty was about to belong to him, his heart was so beautiful that it was about to float up. Lung Ruoxua ignored Zhou Kun's slightly perverted gaze and suppressed the disgust in her heart as she reminded him. Young Master Zhou, since I've already agreed to your conditions, you must put aside your grudges with the Ji family for the time being. You must not find any reason or excuse to cause trouble for the Ji family here. Can you do that? Sure, as long as they don't come looking for trouble with me. I can let them off for the time being on your account. Zhou Kuan promised. The reason he said that was to let Lung Ruoxua know that he was giving her face. Otherwise, how could he possibly let those brats of the Ji family off? Don't worry, they won't take the initiative to find trouble with you. We'll leave this place in a while. Lung Ruoxua said indifferently. As soon as Zhou Kuan heard that Lung Ruoxua was leaving, he was immediately displeased. The reason why he did not cause trouble for the Ji family was because of Lung Ruoxua. If Lung Ruoxua left with the 3 boys from the Ji family, what would he do? At the thought of this, Zhou Kuan immediately said loudly, No, you can't leave this place. You have to stay with us. As for the 3 members of the Ji family, they could go wherever they wanted. He didn't care. On what basis? Lung Ruoxua raised her brows and asked in surprise. On the basis that you are. Zhou Kuan was about to say that she was his woman, but on second thought, Lung Ruoxua was not even his yet. If he said this now, it would be bad if the beauty got angry. Thus, he swallowed the words my woman. We've just reached an agreement. If you leave with them, where am I going to find your fiancé for a one-on-one fight? So, you can't leave. You can only come with me. The more Zhou Kuan thought about it, the more he felt that his idea was good. In that case, he would also have the opportunity to prove to the beauty that he was good. All right then. Lung Ruoxua replied. Then she looked at Ji Yun and the other 2 and said, Let's go with the Zhou family for the time being. At least we can take care of each other. I'll go wherever Wuxia goes, Ji Yun hurriedly said with an ingratiating expression. His little appearance made him look extremely obedient. We don't have any objections. Ji Wu and Ji Tao also looked at each other, and saw a hint of a smile in each other's eyes, because they knew that Zhou Kuan would definitely be depressed if the three of them followed him. Young Master Zhou, let's go, Lung Ruoxue said to Zhou Kuan with a faint smile after getting the approval of Ji Yun, and the other two. Let's go. Zhou Kuan did not expect that the outcome would be like this. He gritted his teeth and braced himself. After he finished speaking, he did not even turn his head back and walked in front angrily. Lung Ruoxue and the others saw this and followed behind him slowly. At this moment, the audience in the stadium saw the scene on the screen, and their eyes widened in disbelief. What was going on? Did they see wrongly? Shouldn't the people inside start fighting as soon as they meet? The scene that they had thought would be an intense battle was over just like that? Everyone felt an unspeakable disappointment in their hearts, especially the families that also had a feud with the Zhou family. They didn't see the fierce battle between the Ji and Zhou families, and they were all unwilling to accept it. However, what could they do if the other party didn't want to fight? However, when the patriarchs of the Ji and Zhou families saw this scene, they were quite satisfied with their way of dealing with it. After all, the enmity between the two families could be completely resolved outside. There was no need to fight to the point where both sides suffered losses and let others benefit from it. That would be a great loss. Wow. This girl is actually using her beauty as a trap. Sitting in the Ning family's exclusive seat, the chief elder of the Craftsmen's Guild saw the situation on the light screen and couldn't help but click his tongue. The expression on his face was as if he had seen some rare wonder. What's wrong with your eyes? Did this girl even need to use a honey trap? As long as she stands there, she will have thousands of admirers who will be willing to follow her orders. Do you understand? The master of the Ning family said with dissatisfaction, but he snorted coldly in his heart. Was there a need to use a honey trap to deal with the Zhou family's kid? That guy was a lecherous person to begin with. Don't be fooled by his appearance. In fact, he was full of tricks. Initially, he didn't know Zhou Kuan. However, ever since Lung Ruoxue met Zhou Kuan and the others face to face, he had specially sent someone to investigate Zhou Kun's past. After finding out about it, he couldn't help but worry for Shui Er. After all, Zhou Kuan was not a good person. As long as the woman he fancied submitted to him, it would be fine. If they did not, he would use any means possible. At the very least, his reputation would be ruined. At the very worst, he might even lose his life. Although this was the immortal realm, a woman's reputation was equally important. If a woman's good reputation was gone, the clan would feel ashamed. In worse cases, they might even expel her from the clan. After all, such a woman did not even have the qualifications to be a chess piece. Compared to his life, Master Ning felt that the act of ruining his reputation was more abominable. After all, if he lost his life, he would be done for and would not know any pain. However, for a woman with a bad reputation, unless she had the protection of her family, or she was strong enough, otherwise, living would be their greatest pain. Right. I said the wrong thing. Our girl's charm is boundless. Those ordinary people can't resist it, hee. The great elder agreed with Master Ning's words without any backbone. What could he do? This old man's mood had been very unstable recently, so he had to coax him a little. He couldn't make him angry, otherwise he would be the only one who would suffer. Chapter 1847. Ji Yun in Sheep's Clothing 1. You're tactful. The master of the Ning family rolled his eyes at the great elder, and said with a tsundere tone. Hearing their conversation, Uncle Long couldn't help but chuckle. These two old men weren't young anymore, but they were still acting like children. Was there any point in bickering over this? He couldn't understand the way they got along. Perhaps this was the so-called generation gap. Uncle Long, do you think that Zhou Kuan will harm the little girl? He's not a good person. The great elder smiled at Uncle Long and asked for his advice. His attitude was extremely affable. If he dares to touch a single hair on this little girl, I'll make sure his entire family is buried with her. Uncle Long's pitch-black eyes glowed with ruthlessness as he spoke in a vicious tone. Uncle Long, you're so imposing." The first elder couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on his forehead and whispered in fear. He looked at Uncle Long and actually sympathized with Zhou Kuan, who was trying to hit on Shui. One had to know that that girl was not to be trifled with. Now that she had a few old fogies who were protective of her, whoever dared to mess with her would be courting death. "Don't be afraid. As long as you're obedient, I won't beat you up," Uncle Long said to the great elder with a faint smile. After hearing Uncle Long's words, the great elder was a little depressed. What did he mean by as long as he was obedient? Did Uncle Long think he was a 3-year-old child? He had lived for so long and had never been coaxed like a child before. It was a new and interesting feeling. "Ning family's boy, you be good too." Glancing at the depressed first elder, Uncle Long said to the master of the Ning family, but he thought to himself that since they had been good friends for many years as an elder, he had to be impartial. Otherwise, if he only reminded one and not the other, it would definitely make them feel different, and it would make them feel unbalanced. Sure enough, hearing Uncle Long mention the old man of the Ning family, first elder felt much better. It felt weird to be coaxed like a warning. However, they were only able to calm down after hearing Uncle Long's words. If it was anyone else who dared to speak to them in such a manner, they would definitely end up in a miserable state. However, Master Ning was even more upset. "Uncle Long, am I not obedient enough?" Uncle Long's words made the master of the Ning family very depressed. This was really unreasonable. He had only warned the first elder. How could he be implicated? "Just barely," Uncle Long said, seemingly dissatisfied. The master of the Ning family was even more depressed, and when the great elder saw this, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. "All right, stop discussing. Focus on the match." Uncle Long yawned and then closed his eyes to take a nap. The master of the Ning family and the first elder had to shut their mouths and look at the screen. At this moment, Lung Ruoxua and the others who were in the special space had no idea that they had become the focus of discussion. Lung Ruoxua was in a terrible fix. The Ji and Zhou families were too much of a troublemaker. There were 6 people in total, but no matter what they did, as long as one side agreed, the other side would definitely object to it. Now the 2 sides were arguing about what to eat for dinner. And this was only their first day together. They still had to stay here for another 20 days. If they were like this every day, what would they do in the future? Lung Ruoxua didn't even dare to imagine. "I want to eat chicken. I want to eat roast chicken." Not far away, Jiyan craned his neck and his face was flushed red. He was fighting with Zhou Kuan at the top of his voice for the right to have dinner that night. "What chicken dinner? How do you know about chickens?" He had long heard that the coward of the Ji family liked to eat chicken, and he would not be happy without chicken. However, he hated chicken the most, so he was determined not to eat it. "So what if I like to eat chicken? Don't you like to eat stinky things?" Jiyan shouted in a bad mood. "Fuck. Who told you that I like to eat stinky things? Do you want to die?" Zhou Kun's expression immediately turned extremely ugly, and he secretly hated Ji Yun in his heart. "Brat, how can you slander me like this in front of a beauty?" Although he had a preference in that aspect, it wasn't like he liked her. "Isn't this something that everyone knows? Why are you so angry?" Ji Yun muttered softly. He was no longer afraid of Zhou Kuan because Ruoxua would protect him. "Hee. You." Zhou Kuan was so angry with Ji Yun that he was trembling. He stretched out his fist and was about to punch him, but he was unexpectedly stopped by the 2 lackeys beside him. "Why are you stopping me? I want to teach him a good lesson." Zhou Kuan turned around and looked at the lackey who was blocking his way with a fierce look on his face. He then roared angrily. "Young Master Kuan, calm down. He's making you angry on purpose. Don't fall for it." Demeanor. Did you forget that you said you would perform well in front of Miss Lung? This Ji Yin has such a good relationship with Miss Lung, so why don't you treat him as your own daughter? Since he wants to eat roast chicken, then let him eat it. It's not a big deal. One of the lackeys whispered to Zhou Kuan. Young Master Kuan had told them that they had to pursue Miss Lung and leave a good impression on her. Therefore, as young Master Kun's think tank, he naturally had to think for young Master Kuan. He couldn't let young Master Kuan make mistakes in such trivial matters. After all, such trivial matters were the most challenging. What you said makes sense. After listening to Ji Yun's words, Zhou Kun's fiery eyes immediately calmed down, and his heart calmed down a lot. However, he loathed Ji Yun even more in his heart. That damn coward. He almost caused me to make a low-level mistake. I can't tolerate him. Then he turned to Ji Yun and said, "Since you want to eat roast chicken, then eat it. However, you have to make sure the chicken is delicious, or I'll beat you up," Zhou Kun threatened. Moreover, the implication of his words was that he wanted Ji Yun to prepare dinner for the day. However, Ji Yun was exceptionally happy after listening to his words. "Don't worry. I'm good at cooking. I guarantee you'll want more after you eat it," Ji Yun said in a fawning manner. After he finished speaking, he ran over to the fire that had already been lit and began to roast his fat chicken. At that moment, Ji Tao, who was helping by the fire, saw Ji Yun happily busying himself. He felt a little upset and couldn't help but say, "Young master, why should we serve them? We're not servants of the Zhou family." Ji Tao felt indignant, but seeing that Ji Yun didn't have much of a reaction, he could only put his dissatisfaction to heart and concentrate on helping Ji Yun roast chicken. After all, Ji Yun couldn't be the only one busy with food for so many people, right? Ji Yun was the young master of the Ji family. Serving others makes us happy, especially when it comes to serving the enemy. This is the best way to cultivate one's body and mind. Ji Yun laughed nonchalantly. Then he took out a large pile of bottles and jars from his storage ring. In an instant, his hands moved quickly and the powder from the bottles and jars was evenly sprinkled on the already sizzling chicken. In an instant, the unique fragrance of roasted meat wafted through the air. Chapter 1848. Ji Yun in sheep's clothing, Tu Zhou Kun, who was not far away, could not help but swallow his saliva when he smelled the aroma of the roasted meat in the air. He thought to himself, "I didn't expect this kid to have some skills. The chicken is so fragrant that even I, who has always hated chicken, want to have a few bites." After the chicken was roasted, Zhou Kun and the other two walked straight towards them without waiting for Ji Yun's instructions. Upon seeing that, Ji Yun quickly handed over a fat chicken with a faint smile. However, Zhou Kun ignored him and took the 3 chickens that were roasting over the fire. He ate one himself and shared the other 2 with his dog legs. Ji Yun saw that he was ignored and smiled indifferently. He continued his work as a chef to serve the people. After all, he had only roasted 4 chickens just now, and 3 of them had been eaten by Zhou Kun and the other 2. As for the other one, he naturally had to leave it for Wuxia. As such, he, Ji Wu, and Ji Tao had nothing to eat, so they had to continue roasting. As for the chicken he had prepared for Lung Wuxia, it was no surprise that Wuxia had fed it to the not-so-cute little fox. However, this time, the little fox did not complain. After it finished eating the chicken, it lay comfortably in Lung Wuxia's arms with its 4 legs up in the air. Its vigilant silver eyes sized up the few people present. The reason why it didn't return to the origin space this time was that it had accepted the task that everyone had arranged for it. It was responsible for monitoring these guys who had ill intentions towards its cute master. Zhou Kun, who had originally intended to please Lung Wuxia, saw that Ji Yun had actually taken the initiative to hand the roast chicken to Lung Wuxia. He was instantly burning with jealousy. However, when he saw that Lung Wuxia not only did not eat the roast chicken that Ji Yun had given her, but had even fed the chicken to an animal, he immediately felt balanced. Not long after dinner, Zhou Kun, who was lying in his tent, suddenly felt discomfort in his stomach. He quickly stood up and ran out of the tent. "Hee, my lovely master, someone's acting up." In another tent, Baby, who was lying in Lung Wuxia's arms, heard the commotion outside and smiled evilly. "You're such a gloating little rascal. Are you that happy to see Zhou Kun and the others make a fool of themselves?" Lung Wuxia caressed her baby's soft, silk-like fur as she spoke with a doting expression. "Of course I'm happy. Who asked him to have ideas about cute master? He's really a toad lusting after a swan's flesh." Baby said with a look of disdain. Not everyone could plot against its master. However, it did not expect that coward Ji Yun To have such a trick up his sleeve. He had actually drugged Zhou Kun, and the other two without anyone knowing. It seemed that one really couldn't judge a book by its cover. This was especially so for someone like Ji Yun, who looked very innocent and even a little silly. Now, it had a whole new level of respect for Ji Yun. It didn't expect that guy to also be so two-faced. Yes, he's going to suffer this time. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She had not expected Ji Yun to do this. In fact, when Ji Yun and Zhou Kun each brought a roast chicken to her, she had already felt the difference between the two roast chickens. Although the difference was very slight and ordinary people might not be able to sense it, as an alchemist, she was more sensitive to smells than others. Therefore, she could tell at once. It was also from that moment on that she began to pay more attention to Ji Yun. Perhaps this young master of the Ji family wasn't what everyone thought he was. Cute master, should we go out and watch the show? Well, let him know that we saw his embarrassing state, and save him from always unconsciously thinking about master. Any man who dares to hit my cute master must be eliminated. Baby said indignantly, and his heart was filled with hatred. It's better not to go out. Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. It would not do them any good to go out at this time. All right then. Baby was a little regretful, but he had to listen to his master. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from outside the tent. Damn those Ji Yun, Ji Wu, and Ji Tao. Get out here. Upon hearing this voice, Lung Ruoxue could only stand up helplessly and leave the tent with the treasure in her arms. If she were to continue closing her eyes, she was afraid that Zhou Kun would vent his anger on Ji Yun, and the other two in a fit of anger. As he walked out of the tent, Ji Yun and the other two were also yawning as they walked out. Why are you calling us? You guys are full of energy and don't want to sleep, but we still want to sleep. Ji Tao said in dissatisfaction. Damn it, what did you put on the roast chicken? Upon hearing Ji Tao's words, Zhou Kun's heart burned with even more anger. Originally he wasn't interested in chicken, but because the smell of the roast chicken was too fragrant, he couldn't help but eat a little. He didn't expect that he would have diarrhea in the middle of the night. After a few rounds, his legs were weak from squatting, and he almost collapsed from diarrhea. I didn't put anything? There are only some seasonings. Ji Tao couldn't help but say. Then he looked at Zhou Kun and the other two, who were obviously pale and looked weak. He asked in puzzlement. What's wrong with you guys? Why do you look so pale? Although he said that out of concern, he was really happy to see Zhou Kun and the other two looking so weak. Fortunately, they were considered half-allies for the time being. Therefore, he appeared to be very concerned. Arg. Are you having diarrhea? Where did you poop it from? Don't you know that this special space is under full surveillance? I'm finished. Now the audience is lucky enough to see your big butts. When Ji Tao heard that the other party had diarrhea, he quickly reminded him in a fuss. However, he had long laughed in his heart. Zhou Kun and the other two were extremely embarrassed. However, how did they get diarrhea? Could it be Ji Yun's doing? Oh, what a good seasoning. We all had diarrhea after eating your roast chicken. Speak. What did you put on the chicken? Zhou Kun growled at the top of his lungs in a fit of anger. Arg. Are you having diarrhea? Where did you poop it from? Don't you know that this special space is under full surveillance? I'm finished. Now the audience is lucky enough to see your big butts. When Ji Tao heard that the other party had diarrhea, he quickly reminded him in a fuss. However, he had long laughed in his heart. Zhou Kun and the other two were extremely embarrassed. However, how did they get diarrhea? Could it be Ji Yun's doing? Oh, it's not impossible. He couldn't help but think. He knew it. How could Ji Yun, the black-bellied fellow who liked to pretend to be a pig to eat tigers, tolerate Zhou Kun and the others climbing over his head and abusing him? It turned out that he was already prepared. Hee. It must be known that there was a reason why Ji Yun was doted on by the Ji family. It was just that outsiders didn't know. However, underestimating Ji Yun would result in him suffering a great loss. This was what he had learned from his experience as a member of the Ji family. As soon as Ji Tao's words fell, Zhou Kun and the other two's faces turned even paler, because the matter was indeed as Ji Tao had said. Their embarrassing behavior when they were in a hurry just now should have been seen by the representatives of the major aristocratic families. What should they do? At that moment, Zhou Kun even felt like dying. It was not just a matter of embarrassment. It should be known that the master of this special space was the Divine Master. Now, the three of them were relieving themselves in the divine artifact that the Divine Master belonged to, and they were also seen by so many representatives of the great families. The evidence was irrefutable, and they could not deny it even if they wanted to. Once the Divine Master found out about this matter, they were afraid that they would lose their lives. All of a sudden, Zhou Kun and the other two became listless. Their bodies, which were originally a little weak due to diarrhea, were now trembling non-stop like fallen leaves in the autumn wind. Chapter 1849. Jiyan in Sheep's Clothing 3. Young Master Kun. What do we do now? A lackey's face turned white, green, and black, like a palette that kept changing. The words he spoke trembled even more. What can we do? Hurry up and clean up. Zhou Kun gave the lackey a hard knock on the head and growled in a low voice. After saying that, he turned around and ran away, while the other two members of the Zhou family followed closely behind. When Lung Ruoxua saw this scene, her forehead was filled with black lines. It seemed like she had worried for nothing. She originally thought that Zhou Kun and the other two would be eager to tear Ji Yun and the rest into pieces. He did not expect that Zhou Kun and the others would ignore them just because of a few words from Ji Tao. However, the consequences of relieving themselves in the Divine Master's divine weapon seemed to be quite serious. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxua couldn't help but look at the confused Ji Yun. That pitiful face was still in a daze. However, after witnessing this, she no longer thought of Ji Yun as simple and naive. That fellow was an out-and-out vicious and merciless wolf in sheep's clothing. Sensing Lung Ruoxua's scrutinizing gaze, Ji Yun smiled timidly and revealed an innocent expression like a little white rabbit. With a face full of fear, he said, "Ruoxua, Zhou Kun and the others are so fierce. You scared me to death." After saying that, the mist in her clear eyes surged up again. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxua couldn't help but roll her eyes. Continue acting. She didn't intend to expose Ji Yun. She wanted to see how long he was going to keep up the act. Ruoxua. Seeing that Lung Ruoxua didn't seem too happy, Ji Yun continued to call out to her timidly. However, Lung Ruoxua continued to ignore him. Ji Yun was helpless and could only use the same trick to run to Lung Ruoxua's side. He pulled on her sleeve and choked. "Ruoxua, you will protect me, right?" Hearing this, the baby couldn't help but roll his eyes. Emph. Don't think that it didn't know what this guy was thinking. However, this move shouldn't be of much use against his cute master, because someone else had used the same move before, and it was that evildoer. Although there were some differences in the moves, they were generally the same. Don't worry. Zhou Kun can't be bothered to cause trouble for you now. He's in even greater trouble. Lung Ruoxua's words were a little ambiguous. She didn't say she would protect him, but she didn't say she wouldn't protect him either. However, when Ji Yun heard her words, he could tell that she was disdaining him. "Ruoxua, I can cook." He can cook so many delicious things, not just roast chicken. However, the conditions here are limited, so I can't fully display my cooking skills. I'll make it for you when I have the opportunity in the future. However, you have to protect me first. If I die here, no one will be able to cook for you in the future," Ji Yun said pitifully. After saying so much, his main purpose was to get Lung Ruoxua to protect him. "You said you would protect me." Lung Ruoxua reminded him for the umpteenth time. Her face was filled with helplessness. You protect me first, and I'll protect your stomach and feed you until you're full every day," Ji Yun said somewhat shyly. After hearing Ji Yun's words, Lung Ruoxua was left speechless countless times. As soon as baby heard this, he immediately became spirited. "What, are you planning to cook for my lovely master every day?" This silly boy clearly had ulterior motives. I'll take care of Ruoxua's meals from now on. I'll cook for her every day." Ji Yun hurriedly nodded. "But my family's cute master has servant girls, and master's food is all prepared by them. If they know that you snatched their rice bowls, they will be very anxious with you. By the way, they're all very fierce. The treasure said with a hint of schadenfreude, as if it could already see Ji Yun's tragic end. It doesn't matter. I'll get along well with them. Ji Yun promised. If he wanted to please Lung Ruoxue, he had to please the people around her first. This was what his father always said. Of course, his father's exact words were that if he wanted to please a woman, he had to first settle the people around her. This way, even if she hated you and ignored you, she wouldn't be able to withstand the praises from everyone around you. As time passed, you would naturally slowly seep into her life. It had to be said that old man Jis' way of thinking was similar to the way the demon pursued Lung Ruoxue. They both wanted to infiltrate the other party's life and were everywhere. If that's the case, then I'll represent my master in accepting you as an attendant. Baby waved his little paws and said with a pout. An attendant? Ji Yun was dumbfounded. He didn't want to be an attendant. That's right. It was an attendant. Besides, I'll have to give you a cut first before you can stay by my cute master's side. Otherwise, as long as you're a male creature, you can't stay by my master's side. Master's man is so fierce. I'll kill every extra man around master. Baby made a ka-cha gesture and said in a serious manner. The cut, it mentioned, was naturally to castrate Ji Yun. Hee hee. Baby's words made even more black lines appear on Lung Ruoxue's forehead. She really wanted to know who Baby had learned these things from. However, she guessed that Ji Yun and the other two wouldn't understand the meaning of the cut, and she naturally didn't intend to explain it to them. However, even if she didn't tell them, it didn't mean that their baby wouldn't tell them. He saw his precious child mysteriously smile, as he looked at the obviously confused Ji Yun and the other two. He then asked, "Do you know where I'm cutting?" When Ji Yun and the other two heard this, they shook their heads in unison and adopted a modest manner. When Baby saw that they were so teachable, he felt even more pleased in his heart. He smiled a little wretchedly and said in a small voice, "Cut off the most important part of a man. After cutting off that part, the man will be impotent in the future. This way, the man who loves master will be assured that there are creatures of the opposite sex staying by master's side. Otherwise, there's no need to talk." When Ji Yun and the other two heard this, they were instantly dumbfounded. The expressions on their faces were extremely strange. This little fox seemed to be telling them the truth. They couldn't be sure of it in such a short time. However, if this matter was true, then the man who stayed by Lung Ruoxue's side was a little too pitiful, right? At the thought of this, the three of them looked at Lung Ruoxue to seek confirmation. However, Lung Ruoxue merely coughed a few times and turned her head to the side in embarrassment, ignoring the 6 pairs of eyes that were filled with anticipation. Seeing Lung Ruoxue's embarrassment, the three of them felt their hearts sink. Could this be true? Because Lung Ruoxue did not deny it. And since she did not deny it, the three of them naturally took it as a silent agreement. As they were worried that Ji Yun would do something irrational in his impulsiveness, Ji Wu and Ji Tao immediately dragged the unwilling Ji Yun to a corner after coming to this conclusion. They began to persuade him to dispel any thoughts he shouldn't have. After all, if a man were to be cut by a knife, his life would be over. Seeing that they had something to discuss, Lung Ruoxue carried the treasure back to her own tent. As for Zhou Kuren and the other two, they were cleaning up the waste that they had discharged at the place where they had defecated previously. As the three of them had pulled it too many times, the cleaning process was a bit big. However, the three of them had already split up the work. Zhou Kun's 2 lackeys were in charge of cleaning the feces on the ground, while Zhou Kun was in charge of cleaning the dirt on the ground with his water attribute divine skill. When the 2 lackeys used a small shovel that they had found somewhere to clean up the feces and pile them up, the 2 of them were a little troubled. This was because they had no place to throw these things. If they threw these excretions somewhere else, it would be equivalent to them working for nothing. Damn it. What are you guys doing? Hurry up and get to work. Zhou Kun, who was as tired as a dead dog, panted and roared. Damn it. He had cleaned up so many places and was half dead from exhaustion. But these 2 insensible things beside him had actually taken a break. This was really preposterous. Young Master Kun, there's no place to throw these things. Upon hearing Zhou Kun's reprimand, one of the lackeys hurriedly said, Why don't you have a place to throw it? Just throw it somewhere. Zhou Kun was stunned as soon as he said that. All the places here belonged to the Divine Master. No matter where he threw it, the nature of the matter was the same. Sob. It seemed like there was really no place to settle it. Immediately, the three of them frowned and were at a loss. After thinking hard for a long time, Zhou Kun suddenly had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and he said loudly, "Zhou Cheng, hand over your storage ring." "A storage ring? Why?" Zhou Cheng asked with a pained expression. The storage ring that he was wearing now was a reward from his family not long ago. The space inside was very large, and he had been reluctant to use it. He wanted to put more things in preparation for entering the special space, so he used the ring. Who knew that young Master Kun would actually ask him to give up the ring? Suddenly, the only thought in his mind was that young Master Kun wanted to steal his things. However, after thinking about it again, the possibility of this was too low. After all, young Master Kun knew very well what was in his ring, but young Master Kun didn't even care about it. He couldn't understand what young Master Kun meant. What other reason could it be? Of course it's to pack things. Zhou Kun roared in a bad mood. Chapter 1850, Strange Movement 1. What are you trying to store? Zhou Cheng stammered as he asked. He did not know why, but he had a bad feeling in his heart. How could this be? Just treat this as storing these rubbish. Zhou Kun pointed at the pile of disgusting, stinky things on the ground and said matter-of-factly. Zhou Cheng was dumbfounded when he heard that. Young Master Kun. And no, I can't. How can you use my storage ring to store these things? After a long while, Zhou Cheng finally came back to his senses and said with a long face, "If I don't use yours, do I have to use mine?" Zhou Kun glared at him and said fiercely, "Of course you can't." Zhou Cheng said hurriedly, but his eyes secretly looked at Zhou Li, who was standing at the side gloating. Why didn't he use Zhou Li's storage ring? Zhou Cheng couldn't help but think to himself in anger. Zhou Cheng, don't even think about it. My storage equipment was given to me by young Master Kun. Zhou Li said with a smile. In other words, he was saying, you dare to use the storage ring that young Master Kun gave you to store these things? Young Master Kun will definitely get angry with you first. Sure enough, as Zhou Li had expected, after hearing Zhou Li's words, Zhou Kun glared at him unhappily and ordered loudly, "Stop talking nonsense. Quickly hand over your storage ring. I'll get you a better one in the future." He was running out of patience. "Oh," Zhou Cheng responded unwillingly. Who asked him to be in such a disadvantageous position now? However, he did not have any hope for Zhou Kun to get him a better storage ring. Although the Zhou family could not be compared to the 8 great divine realms, it was still considered a top-notch force in the divine realm. However, it was also because it was a large family clan that there were many clansmen. As a result, the family's resources were slightly limited. If one was not from the main branch of the family or a branch family with good qualifications, it would be difficult for an ordinary clansman to stand out in the family. However, it was also because he was close to Zhou Kun, who was from the main branch, that his life in the Zhou family was better. However, he was only slightly stronger than the other members of the branch family. Otherwise, he would not have treated the storage ring given to him by the family as a treasure. It was a pity that the ring was about to leave him. Zhou Cheng felt his heart ache, especially when he handed over his storage ring. He felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Seeing this, Zhou Li comforted him. "Don't be so stingy. After we get out, we can still use the storage ring after it's cleaned. Use my ass." Upon hearing this, Zhou Cheng was furious. Fuck. This fellow was actually making sarcastic remarks. So it wasn't his storage ring. Enough. Don't make any noise. Zhou Kun, who had run out of patience, glanced at the two of them and roared in anger. Then he handed the ring to Zhou Li and said, "Hurry up and pack up these things." Fuck. He had been cleaning up the feces for almost a night, and he was exhausted. More importantly, he had lost a lot of face. As for whether he could keep his life, he had no confidence at all. Sob. He hoped that the Master God would spare their lives on account that they had made up for their mistakes. He prayed sincerely. Yes. Zhou Li happily took the storage ring that Zhou Kun handed over, and stored all the stinky things that were piled on the ground into the ring. Although the work was a little disgusting, it was worth it to be able to see Zhou Cheng's depression. After cleaning up the waste on the ground, Zhou Kun cleaned up the ground with his water attribute divine skill. By the time they were done, it was almost dawn. The three of them returned to the tent like dead dogs and refused to come out. Although they were already gods, their cultivation was limited. After all, they would still feel tired if they overexerted themselves. As expected, Zhou Kun and the other two's performance in the special space was fully exposed to everyone. In the beginning, when they saw the three big white buttocks on the light screen, all of them had an incredulous expression on their faces, and their foreheads were filled with black lines. Later on, what Zhou Kun and the other two did also made them dumbfounded. Many people couldn't believe their eyes. They even thought that they had seen it wrong, because such a thing was simply impossible and shouldn't have appeared in the elite gathering. However, it had appeared. A good and proper elite gathering was held under the eyes of thousands of people. However, in just a few days, such an unforeseen event occurred. Was this still the extremely serious elite gathering? This was clearly a prank. They wanted to destroy the essence of the elite gathering. With this thought in mind, everyone looked at the Zhou clan leader with anger and hostility. Clan leader Zhou. That Zhou Kun is a junior that you like more, right? His way of doing things was indeed different. It has the style of your Zhou family. Next to the Zhou family was the Ji family's seat, and the one who had spoken was the Ji family's patriarch, who had a gloating expression on his face. Seeing the constipated expression on Patriarch Zhou's face, Patriarch Ji was overjoyed. At first, he had been quite dissatisfied with the God Lord's estate's arrangement of the two families together. After all, it was well known in the divine world that the two families were not on good terms. But now, he was somewhat grateful for the God Lord's estate's arrangement. Moreover, under close observation, the expression on the Zhou family's master's face kept changing. It was particularly wonderful to watch. This could be considered a rare sight. The master of the Ji family was in a great mood. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. The Zhou clan leader gritted his teeth and growled as he listened to the Ji clan leader's gloating and mocking. At this moment, his lungs were about to explode from anger. That damned Zhou Kun. She initially thought that he was a reliable person. Who knew that he would do such an embarrassing thing? The Zhou family had lost all their face. However, losing face was not a big deal. If the Divine Lord's estate were to pursue the matter, the Zhou family would probably be implicated. No. This was absolutely not allowed. He could not implicate the Zhou family because of these three idiots. At this moment, the Zhou clan leader immediately made the decision to sacrifice the war chariot to protect the general. The death of three incompetent clan members was not a big deal, but the Zhou clan could not be harmed. Just as the Zhou family's master made his decision, the guards of the Divine Lord's estate immediately came to invite him, saying that the Divine Lord's estate had something important to discuss with him. Seeing this, the Zhou family's master's heart sank. What he was afraid of really happened. The head of the Zhou clan's face was pale as he followed behind the guard in a daze. He did not even dare to look back as he left. After he left, the crowd was in a heated discussion. Some even boldly predicted that the Zhou family would probably be removed from the list of top families. And among these people, there were those who lamented the fickleness of things, and there were also those who gloated. Seeing this scene, the first elder sitting in the Ning family's seat became curious again. Old man Ning, do you think that the Zhou family will really be unlucky? I don't know, but even if they're not unlucky, I'm afraid the Zhou family won't have a good time in the future. How could this happen? It's so funny. The master of the Ning family smiled. Compared to some people's gloating, he felt that the matter was more ridiculous. Chapter 1851, Strange Movement 2. He probably fell for it, but he deserved it. The first elder did not sympathize with Zhou Kun at all. However, he was very curious about the person who had caused Zhou Kun to fall for it. Could it be the little girl's doing? I think I'll be honest for a while. The master of the Ning family said with a smile. I don't think so. Uncle Long, who had been resting with his eyes closed, suddenly interrupted. Don't tell me he's going to be smug? The first elder asked in surprise. Just wait and see. Oh. I want to say that this year's elite gathering is very exciting. Uncle Long praised. Hearing Uncle Long's words, the first elder and the master of the Ning family couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on their foreheads. They thought to themselves, Uncle Long's appreciation level is indeed different from others. However, compared with the previous elite meetings, this one seems a bit funny. Looking at their expressions, Uncle Long smiled. He didn't say anything and closed his eyes again. At this moment, the sky in the special space was already bright. In the special space, it was divided into day and night. At night, the special space had an extra trace of eeriness and horror. Therefore, Lung Ruoxue and the others would find a fixed place to rest at night. However, it seemed that today was destined to be different. When Lung Ruoxue came out of the tent with her treasure, she only saw Ji Yun and the other two. Zhou Kuan and the other two were nowhere to be seen. Could it be that those three fellows had fled to avoid punishment? However, even if he were to escape, he wouldn't be able to escape from the Divine Master's palm, right? She thought to herself. Ruoxue, you're awake. The moment Ji Yun saw Lung Ruoxue, he immediately ran to her like a little tail. His clear and bright eyes, like those of a little white rabbit, stared at Lung Ruoxue without blinking. And Lung Ruoxue nodded. She glanced at the excited Ji Yun and thought to herself, it seems like the talk about the treasure being cut with one blade yesterday didn't affect this fellow. Why did he still look so heartless? Ruoxue, I've made breakfast. Come and eat. Ji Yun was in a good mood and was very enthusiastic towards Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue nodded and walked over to the table that had been set up. She happened to see Ji Tao looking at her with a strange expression. Instantly, countless black lines slid down her forehead. What's wrong? Lung Ruoxue was a little surprised. Ji Tao's gaze was too strange. She didn't do anything, right? I'm fine. Ji Tao stuttered a little, and his handsome face was stained with a trace of embarrassment. Since you're fine, why are you looking at me like that? Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and asked curiously. Miss Lung's devastatingly beautiful face is unparalleled in the world, so I couldn't help but take a few more glances. Ji Tao smiled as he hurriedly replied. He calmly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. That was close. He almost told the truth. Actually, his main intention was to observe what kind of charm Lung Ruoxue had. They had tried to persuade him for a long time last night, but he had remained unmoved. However, it was undeniable that this woman's beauty was unparalleled in this world. If he didn't already have someone he liked, he would probably also fall in love with her. However, she already had a fiancé. He couldn't understand why Ji Yun was still involved. Did he really want to be cut and be unable to have sex in the future? Lung Ruoxue was a little speechless. Although Ji Tao's words were a compliment, why did she feel that something was wrong when she heard it? At this moment, Ji Yun had already brought a bowl of fragrant porridge and walked to Lung Ruoxue's side. He said politely, Ruoxue, this is the porridge I made for you. Try it and see if it suits your taste. After she finished speaking, she looked at Lung Ruoxue with anticipation. Her clear eyes were filled with the words hurry up and eat. Looking at the bowl of porridge, Lung Ruoxue's head ached. Although the kanji was personally made by Ji Yun and she should show her support, it was precisely because of this that she did not dare to accept it. After all, she knew that Ji Yun was not a kind and innocent little rabbit. Naturally, she was more vigilant against him. Moreover, if the evildoer knew that she had eaten the porridge cooked by another man, he might do something. She had to be careful. Thank you, but I don't like porridge. Lung Ruoxue said apologetically. It doesn't matter, then let this little beast drink it. I put a lot of chicken in here. This little fox will definitely like it. Ji Yun, who was already prepared, had a calm smile on his face. However, he still felt a little hurt in his heart. Ruoxue had rejected him again. Ever since the two of them had met, he had washed his hands and made soup for Ruoxue every day. Unfortunately, he had never tasted any of it in Ruoxue's mouth. This fact made him extremely conflicted. Was he really that unattractive? He didn't believe it. However, it was also because of this that he became braver. I don't like porridge either. I only eat meat. Baby, who heard this, quickly said in dissatisfaction. Eating meat so early in the morning is bad for digestion. It's better to eat something light. Ji-yin placed the kanji in front of his baby and coaxed him. I don't want to. Baby stubbornly turned its little head and decided not to give this silly boy any face. However, Ji-yin was even more stubborn than Baby. He picked up the spoon and fed Baby a spoonful. He continued to coax. Be good. Eat some. This kanji is very delicious. Ji-yin had decided. To please the people or beasts by Lung Ruoxia's side, he would start with this little fox. However, this little fox didn't seem to be easy to deal with. It didn't matter, he had plenty of patience. He would definitely succeed one day. I said I'm not eating. Do you not understand human language? The baby was furious. Fuck. Did this guy have to force it to swear? You're not a human to begin with. Ji-yun's eyes were wide open as he warned in a low voice. Upon hearing his words, Baby became even angrier. He was so angry that all the hair on his body stood on end. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws, wanting to rush in front of Ji-yun to scratch him. However, it was fortunate that Lung Ruoxia held onto his furious baby tightly. Otherwise, Ji-yun's handsome face would have been ruined. Calm down. Lung Ruoxia caressed Baby's fur and comforted him. Cute master. Don't stop me, let me teach him a good lesson. Baby roared in anger and bared his teeth to intimidate Ji-yun. However, this gave Ji-yun a chance to ask for help. She saw Ji-yunshu lean towards Lung Ruoxia with tears in her eyes. She tugged at the corner of her clothes and said with a wronged expression, Ruoxia, your little beast is so fierce. Like master, like beast. The master was fierce, and so were the beast. Oh. This was probably what her father had always said. If you're not a family, you can't enter the same house. Baby isn't usually like this. Lung Ruoxia said with a faint smile as she avoided Ji-yun's touch. What does it usually look like? Ji-yun tried to start a conversation. Very well behaved, obedient, and cute. Lung Ruoxia laughed as she spoke. Upon hearing these words, Baby's tsundere little tail was about to stand up. Chapter 1852, Strange Movement 3? Oh. Ji-yun softly replied. Actually, he really wanted to say, why can't I see how cute this little fox is? It seemed that from the moment he saw this little fox, this little fellow had never given him a good look. Silly boy, what are you for? Hurry up and take your kanji away. I want meat, not kanji. Baby gently raised his little chin and said like a master. There's meat in the porridge. Didn't I say that I put a lot of chicken in it? Ji-yun was still trying his best to promote his kanji. I don't eat the meat in the porridge. Go get me some roasted meat. The treasurer ordered Ji-yun, as if it was a matter of course. However, when Ji-tao and Ji-woo heard this, they didn't know what to say. They could only remain silent. But there's only porridge and no roasted meat. Ji-yun was in a difficult position. He thought to himself, this little fox is really difficult to serve. He had never heard of anyone eating barbecued meat so early in the morning. I don't care, I just want to eat roasted meat. Baby deliberately said in a difficult tone. All right then. Wait a minute. Ji-yun was helpless. He resigned himself to his fate, and could only go roast meat for the fox. Did he have it easy? When his precious baby got to eat the roasted meat as he wished, he was satisfied and no longer looked for trouble with Ji-yun. However, it was clearly impossible for Ji-yun to please him so easily. Not long after they had breakfast, they were hesitating about whether to continue on their way when Zhou Kun and the other two, who were pale-faced, walked out of their tents unsteadily. After seeing Ji-yun and the other two, everything that had happened last night was suddenly ignited again. Damn it. What did you three do to us? Who are you? Zhou Kun shouted angrily when he saw Ji-yun and the other two. We didn't do anything. Ji-yun blinked his eyes, his face filled with grievance and confusion. You didn't do anything? Then how did we get the runs? Zhou Kun asked with a red face. His liver ached at the thought of it. Not only did Ji-yun and the other two embarrass them, but they also caused them to lose their lives. How could he not hate them? Whenever he thought about the unknown future, he would feel lost. However, if he didn't have a good life, then Ji-yun and the other two wouldn't have a good life either. How would we know? Ji-yun pouted, feeling extremely wronged. That's right. You guys ate something bad and now you're blaming it on us? Ji-tao also glared at Jo Kun and the other two in dissatisfaction. What do you mean we ate something bad? We didn't eat anything else other than Ji-yun's roasted chicken yesterday. Who else could it be if not him? Jo Kun shouted at the top of his lungs, while Zhou Li and Zhou Chung also glared at Ji-yun and the other two menacingly. They should have gotten to the bottom of this matter last night, but they were busy destroying the corpses at that time, so they had delayed it until now. Are you sure you've never eaten anything else? You haven't even had a sip of water? Ji Wu asked suspiciously. Then he continued, you said that the problem was caused by eating the chicken we roasted, but we ate the chicken yesterday too. How are we fine? As soon as Ji Wu asked his question, Zhou Kun and the other two were immediately at a loss for words. After a long while, Zhou Kun had a flash of inspiration and said, we didn't eat the same batch. The three of us ate the roasted meat first, while you ate the roasted meat later. That's why there's no problem with yours. Oh really? However, if I remember correctly, 4 of them were roasted and the 3 of you ate one each. As for the other one, it was eaten by this little fox. It didn't have diarrhea. Ji Wu pointed at the treasure with a faint smile. He couldn't help but secretly rejoice that there was a witness. Otherwise, they would have been unable to clear their names even if they jumped into the Yellow River. The chicken tasted pretty good. I didn't have a stomachache. Seeing that he was involved in the matter, Baby had no choice but to come out and prove that he was fine. Why, you're with them, so of course you'll side with them. Zhou Li immediately said. You're wrong. I'm not with them. She's my master. Baby pointed at Lung Ruoxue. Then he looked at his master with an aggrieved expression, as if he was saying, who wants to be on the same side as that silly kid? The treasure is my beastie, don't be mistaken. Lung Ruoxue squinted her eyes and said in a slightly displeased tone, you idiot! Who allowed you to speak such nonsense? Upon seeing that, Zhou Kun smacked Zhou Li's head hard and growled in a low voice. Then he smiled at Lung Ruoxue and said, hee hee. Miss Lung, Zhou Li didn't mean it that way. Please don't misunderstand. We only suspect that Ji Yun and the others have something to do with this, but we have no suspicions about your little beastie. That's good. Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly, and Zhou Kun was immediately captivated by her. He was stunned, and a suspicious liquid flowed out of the corner of his mouth. However, what my baby said is true. Nothing happened to it after eating the chicken yesterday, so you'd better think about it carefully and see if it had eaten anything else. Lung Ruoxue then suggested. Just as Lung Ruoxue finished her sentence, Zhou Li suddenly shouted in shock. Young Master Kun! I remember we seemed to have eaten yesterday afternoon. However, Zhou Li was interrupted by Zhou Kun before he could finish his sentence. What nonsense are you talking about? Where did we eat at noon? Zhou Kun glared at Zhou Li and roared with resentment. Arg! Never eaten before. I've remembered it wrong. Zhou Li also knew that he had said the wrong thing and quickly changed his words. However, when Ji Yun and the other two heard their conversation, they all smiled without saying a word. However, the slightly mocking expression on their faces made Zhou Kun's heart burn with anger. Damn it! What are you looking at? I've never seen a beautiful man before. Zhou Kun was furious. You can be considered a handsome man? Upon hearing this, Ji Tao laughed. Although Zhou Kun was not ugly, he was still a distance away from being a handsome man. This had a lot to do with the Zhou family's inheritance, because the Zhou family's appearance was not very outstanding in the divine realm. How am I not considered a handsome man? Zhou Kun glared at him with his eyes that were spewing fire and said fiercely, fuck! He actually dared to say that about him in front of a beauty. How preposterous! At this moment, although he was still a little worried about the punishment from the Divine Master's estate, his lust also prevailed. Therefore, he was determined to get Lung Ruoxue. No matter how I look at you, you can't be considered a handsome man. Ji Tao sized up Zhou Kun and told the truth. You. Zhou Kuan was so infuriated by Ji Tao that he was speechless. If it were not for the fact that he still wanted to maintain a good image in front of Leng Ruoxue, he would have definitely taught Ji Tao a lesson. Stop arguing. Young Master Zhou, regarding the fact that you had diarrhea the entire night, I am deeply sympathetic. However, you do not have any evidence to prove that this matter was man-made. So I hope that you both will stop arguing over this matter. Since this matter has already happened, you'd better think about how to deal with it. If my guess is correct, the God Lord's estate will definitely punish you for this matter. Leng Ruoxue reminded them earnestly and couldn't help but laugh in her heart. I'm afraid that Zhou Kuan and the other two will have a hard time this time. He probably wouldn't have the time to have any ideas about her, right? Leng Ruoxue's words made Zhou Kuan feel extremely touched. Wu beauty is still the best. She was considerate and understanding, always thinking about him. He had decided that he would treat this beauty well in the future. Zhou Kuan decided in his heart. However, it was fortunate that Leng Ruoxue did not know what Zhou Kuan was thinking. If she had known that Zhou Kuan had made up his mind because of her words, she would probably be depressed to death. Seeing that Zhou Kuan's eyes were suddenly filled with tears, Leng Ruoxue thought that Zhou Kuan was frightened by the name of the Divine Lord's estate. She did not know that he was actually crying because he was touched. Young Master Zhou, the matter might not be as serious as you think, so you don't have to be too afraid. Leng Ruoxue consoled him perfunctorily. If the God Lord's estate wants to pursue this matter, I will admit my mistakes to them. Zhou Kuan said very sincerely, then continued. Miss Leng, thank you for your concern. I'm so happy. Upon hearing Zhou Kuan's words, Leng Ruoxue could tell that something was amiss. A few drops of cold sweat hung on her forehead as she secretly complained. Did I say something? Why did Zhou Kuan have such a reaction? However, she did not want to pay too much attention to Zhou Kuan. Hence, she changed the topic and suggested, since young Master Zhou and the other two are fine, let's set off. Yes. Ji Yin was the first to raise both hands in agreement. As long as it was something Ruoxue said, he would agree to it. Let's go, Zhou Kuan said, unwilling to be outdone. Although his body was still a little weak at the moment, he could not lose to this useless coward. Just like that, the group of 7 continued on their way. However, this time, Zhou Kuan kept a respectful distance from the food that Ji Yun and the other two had brought him. However, they still had diarrhea as usual while eating the food that he had brought. In this way, the truth was revealed. It was the food they brought that wasn't clean. After Ji Yun found out about it, she even deliberately ran to Zhou Kuan, who was exhausted from diarrhea, and said with a wronged look, "It's really none of my business, right? Do you know that you've wronged me now?" His words made Zhou Kuan so angry that he gritted his teeth and did not manage to curse at him. After dragging them for 3 days in a row, Zhou Kuan and the other two were unable to move no matter what. Out of desperation, Leng Ruoxue and the others had no choice but to stay with them temporarily. At this time, it had been almost half a month since they entered the special space. However, apart from the Ji and Zhou families who had temporarily stopped fighting, they had not seen any other participants from the other families. All of a sudden, the earth trembled and the mountains shook. The special space began to shake violently. Chapter 1853. The barrier shattered. 1. At that moment, the special space was distorted, and the trees and rocks were shaking to different degrees. Leng Ruoxue and the others who were in the special space felt the unusual violent shaking. They quickly pulled on the fixed objects beside them, such as trees and hills, to prevent themselves from falling to the ground. But at the same time, a deafening shriek suddenly rang out. "Arg! Damn it! Quickly let go of me!" The person who screamed was Zhou Kuan. The reason why he screamed so loudly was because Ji Yun had used him as a tree stump and was holding him tightly. As for Zhou Kuan, he was swaying and finally plopped. With a sound, he fell on the ground gloriously. After the violent shaking came to a temporary end, Zhou Kuan tried his best to get up and glared at Ji Yun as he roared. "Fuck! You coward, why are you pulling me? There's a tree over there, you know that." As soon as he finished shouting, the special space shook violently again. He was not prepared for it and fell down again. Upon seeing this, Lung Ruoxue and the rest snickered in their hearts. On the other hand, Ji Yun revealed a pure and innocent expression as she looked at Zhou Kuan and said, "I didn't mean to grab you. You were the closest to me, so it was my instinct to grab you." After saying that, he even shrank his neck, as if Zhou Kuan would beat him up at any time. "But you can't grab my chest." "Fuck. You can grab anywhere. Why are you grabbing onto her chest?" Zhou Kuan was furious. His chest was very sensitive, and he actually had a reaction after being grabbed by Ji Yun. This was the main reason why he was flustered and exasperated. Fuck. The one who caught him was a real man. Although this man was a little sissy, his gender was unquestionable. I didn't do it on purpose. Besides, I've already caught you. What else do you want to do? Do you want me to take responsibility for you? I'm telling you, I like women. So you'd better not blame me. Ji Yun spoke in a serious tone. Upon hearing his words, Zhou Kun's face turned livid with anger. He trembled all over and pointed at Ji Yun, unable to say a complete sentence. However, when Lung Ruoxue, Ji Wu, Ji Tao, and Baby heard their conversation, they were overjoyed and couldn't help but laugh out loud. As for Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li, their shoulders were trembling violently. It was obvious that they were having a hard time holding it in. Ha ha ha. Lung Ruoxue laughed happily. The two of them were so funny. To be honest, Lung Ruoxue deeply felt that the two of them were quite funny together. Besides, Zhou Kuan was tall and burly, while Ji Yun looked weak and fragile. When the two of them stood together, they actually looked surprisingly harmonious. It seemed that she also had the potential to be a fujoshi. Miss Lung, in being bullied, and you're actually still laughing. After a long while, Zhou Kuan, who only regained his senses after hearing the laughter, could not help but say with a bitter expression when he saw Lung Ruoxue laughing so happily. Upon hearing Zhou Kun's words, Lung Ruoxue could not help but wipe the cold sweat on her forehead. She thought to herself, is Zhou Kuan acting coquettishly? A man as strong as a bear had said such words to her. It was too terrifying. She couldn't help but shiver. Ruoxue, I didn't bully him. I didn't grab his chest on purpose. Woo. He still wants to frame me and make me take responsibility. Humph. I will definitely not be responsible for him. At this moment, Ji Yun also spoke with righteous indignation. His handsome little face was still alternating between green and white, and he was faintly in a state of fury. Damn it. When did I say that I want you to take responsibility? Ji Yun's words made Zhou Kuan jump in shock. If it were not for his weak body, he would have jumped even higher. Fuck. This was really too hateful. Wasn't this just trying to lie? You didn't say it clearly, but you made it very clear that I understand. I'll say it again, don't think I'll take responsibility for you. When Lung Ruoxue and the others heard this, they were all impressed by Ji Yun. Especially when they saw Zhou Kun's face, which was uglier than constipation. They felt that the highest level of anger was Ji Yun's. He kept pretending to be stupid, but the other party could not do anything to him. Who asked him to think that Ji Yun was a fool? Wouldn't he be stupider than a fool to argue with a fool? Seeing that Zhou Kun's body was fuming with anger and there was a tendency for green smoke to rise from the top of his head, Lung Ruoxue became the peacemaker and said, "All right. Everyone, please speak less. What happened just now was just an accident, and the cause was an earthquake. So don't destroy our unity because of such a small matter. Let's think about what we should do next." If she did not speak, Zhou Kuan would probably kill Ji Yun in a fit of anger. To be honest, she was not sure what kind of strength Ji Yun had. Since Lung Ruoxue had spoken, Zhou Kuan only snorted coldly and turned his head away to ignore Ji Yun. Ji Yun, on the other hand, ran over to Lung Ruoxue and said with a silly smile, "I'll listen to everything Ruoxue says. Well, do whatever Ruoxue says." His words made Ji Wu and Ji Tao speechless. They couldn't bear it anymore and complained in their hearts. Does this guy have any principles? As for Zhou Kuan, when he heard those nauseating words, apart from feeling nauseated, he also wanted to give Ji Yun a good beating. This coward was really too despicable. He actually tried to please Lung Ruoxue in front of him. He could tolerate it but not his aunt. But I don't know what we should do. The earthquake just now came too suddenly. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She didn't know why, but she felt that something was about to happen. Then what should we do? When Ji Yun heard this, he was instantly dumbfounded. He had no idea what to do. What else can we do? Of course, I'm looking for the reason. Zhou Kuan shouted in a rough voice, looking down on Ji Yun's submissive appearance. Where can we find the reason? Ji Yun asked shamelessly, his clear eyes wide open. How would I know? Zhou Kuan roared in a bad mood. Since you don't even know where we should go to find the reason, then aren't you just talking nonsense? Who wouldn't have thought of the reason? The key is where we can find the reason. Ji Yun lectured Zhou Kuan in a serious and earnest manner, causing him to be stunned and unable to react for a long time. After he finished speaking, Ji Yun turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, Ruoxue, what I said makes sense, right? And Lung Ruoxue nodded helplessly. She could tell that although Zhou Kuan had always wanted to find trouble with Ji Yun was like Zhou Kun's nemesis. Not only did he not manage to find trouble with him, but he also infuriated Lung Ruoxue to death in the end. AI. The interaction between people was indeed wonderful. She had a deep understanding of this. Then you think of a good idea. After being stunned for a moment, Zhou Kuan came back to his senses. At the same time, he happened to hear Ji Yun acting obediently to Lung Ruoxue, who responded to him. He was immediately enraged and said to Ji Yun, I'll listen to everything Ruoxue says. Ji Yun said shyly. From his words, it seemed like Lung Ruoxue was the head of the family. Chapter 1854. The barrier shattered, too. Upon hearing that, Zhou Kuan became even angrier and couldn't help but curse. Fuck! You coward, are you even a man? How could he let a woman stand up for him? You've disgraced us men. So don't tell anyone that I know you. It's fine if you don't want to say it. Do you think you're some famous person? It was wrong. You're indeed famous now. After all, in the entire divine realm, only the three of you from your Zhou clan would dare to shit here. No one else would have the guts to do so. Ji Yun touched a sore spot and deliberately added salt to Zhou Kun's wound. As for Zhou Kuan, he was so angry that his face turned pale and his body trembled non-stop. Upon seeing this, Lung Ruoxue was really afraid that he would faint accidentally. She was not concerned about him, but if Zhou Kuan fainted, it would bring them trouble. At that time, wouldn't they still have to stay here to accompany him? Cough cough. Lung Ruoxue cleared her throat and coughed twice. At the same time, she gave Ji Yun a look, telling him to stop while he was ahead and not to go too far. Although Zhou Kuan was quite annoying, with the three of them around, they could at least help when they encountered trouble. However, if he were to faint from anger, wouldn't they be the ones in trouble? Ji Yun understood what he meant and obediently shut his mouth, pretending to be obedient. Zhou Kun's body trembled for a long time before he finally calmed down. He seemed to have collapsed and sat on the ground. His face was pale, as if he had seen a ghost. After a long time, the color on Zhou Kun's face finally returned to normal. Upon seeing that, Lung Ruoxue suggested that they leave the place and go somewhere else to take a look. After all, the tremor just now could not have happened without any warning. There must have been some signs. After a few days of rest, the group finally set off again. At this time, the various families that were watching the special space through the screen outside the arena also received the news from the Divine Lord's estate. In the special space, all the barriers had shattered for some reason. The moment they heard this news, all the family representatives turned pale with fright. The barrier shattered? What did that mean? It meant that the participants would not be restricted to any group. In other words, it was possible for a divine emperor to encounter a priest. If there was a conflict between the two sides, the priest would have a reason to kill. When they thought of this possibility, all the family representatives could no longer remain calm. After all, which family did not have a few enemies? If someone had really done something to them in the special space, they would be helpless. After all, the Divine Master's estate had ordered before the match that life and death were up to fate in the special space. Moreover, if a member of the clan was killed by the enemy, He was not allowed to take the opportunity to cause trouble and seek revenge. This was the cruelest part of the competition. However, even though they were mentally prepared for the possible death of their clansmen, they would not be able to remain calm if someone really died. Compared to the other people who were scared and jittery, the Ning family's exclusive seats were quite calm. In fact, it was not that the foreign affairs elder and the others were not worried, nor that they did not want to speak. It was just that seeing that the family master and Uncle Long were all silent, as if they were thinking, no one dared to disturb them. After a long while, Uncle Long broke the heavy atmosphere and said, "Ning family boy, what do you think of this?" Hearing Uncle Long speak, the foreign affairs elder and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief. Before this, they didn't even dare to breathe. "I think this is a bit abnormal. You should know that this is not the first time the elite gathering is held. How could there be such a mistake? Furthermore, that special space was personally created by Master Yu. How could the space barrier be broken?" The master of the Ning family frowned. As he said this, his eyes turned to the first elder. "Old man, don't you think so?" The master of the Ning family asked the grand elder. Master Yu is a godlike existence in the hearts of us artifact craftsmen. The things he refines must be of the highest quality, so it's impossible for such a problem to occur. Let alone the equipment refined by Master Yu. Even an ordinary artifact craftsman would not make such a low-level mistake. The first elder said with a serious expression. He could not help but worry for Lung Ruoxue and the rest because this accident was obviously man-made. When Uncle Long heard their conversation, he looked at them quietly for a long time. In the end, he didn't say a word and continued to close his eyes. However, at this time, his heart was already in turmoil because he knew that this incident was most likely directed at Shui. However, he believed in the little girl's ability and believed that she would be able to settle this matter. The reason why he didn't explain it too clearly was because he was afraid that the two boys would be worried and lose control. In fact, no matter what was happening in the special space, they could only watch helplessly. Hence, they could only trust in Lung Ruoxue and the rest's ability to adapt to any situation. Seeing Uncle Long's reaction, the master of the Ning family and the first elder both understood what he meant. After sighing, they fell silent again, and the atmosphere became even more depressing than before. When the foreign affairs elder and the others saw this, their foreheads were full of cold sweat, and they didn't dare to breathe. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the others who were searching for the reason in the special space were completely unaware of the worried feelings of the representatives from the various families. That was until they met another person. That person had the cultivation of a god king. Lung Ruoxue squinted her beautiful eyes as she sized up the arrogant man who treated them like ants. The man had an ordinary appearance and looked to be around 30 years old. His eyes were slightly cloudy as he stared lecherously at Lung Ruoxue's perky breasts. He smacked his lips and his eyes revealed a determined expression. When she saw his lecherous gaze, Lung Ruoxue laughed coldly in her heart. If not for the fact that she was afraid of exposing her true strength, she would have long gone up to teach this man a lesson. He dared to look at her so openly and with such a perverted gaze. Wasn't he looking for death? Moreover, when she saw the man, Lung Ruoxue realized that Zhou Kuan was not too bad. At least on the surface, Zhou Kuan respected her very much. However, this man was clearly challenging the limits of her patience. Although Lung Ruoxue was enduring it silently, Zhou Kuan could not stand it. One should know that he had long treated Lung Ruoxue as his own possession. Of course, only he could look at his own woman in such an unbridled manner. If other men dared to use such a vulgar gaze to size up his woman, weren't they challenging his dignity as a man? Therefore Zhou Kuan was furious. The anger that he had accumulated over the past few days suddenly exploded at this moment. Zhou Kuan was like a shooting star as he rushed in front of the man and raised his hand to punch him. His fist contained a surging divine power, and it was as cold as the cold wind as it attacked the lecherous man opposite him. The man saw that Zhou Kuan was not coming with good intentions, and quickly dodged to the side to avoid the punch. However, the wind from the punch still brushed past his shoulder, and left a bloody wound on his body. He was instantly enraged. Chapter 1855. The Barrier Shattered 3. Where did this wild brat come from? How dare you injure your grandpa's son? The man bellowed in anger. His voice was unusually sharp, causing Lung Ruoxue and the others' eardrums to ring. I'm hitting you. You dare to covet my woman, you must be tired of living. Zhou Kun said angrily. Humph. He couldn't deal with Ji Yun in front of Lung Ruoxue, but could he not deal with this fellow who had come to his door to seek death? At this moment, Zhou Kun was filled with anger and did not pay attention to the man's cultivation level at all. Moreover, he was not as capable as Lung Ruoxue to see through other people's cultivation levels. Therefore, even if he had seen it, he was afraid that he would not be able to see through the man's cultivation level. Otherwise, he would not have rushed forward to fight with the other party just because he was acting rashly. When Ji Yun saw how brave Zhou Kun was, a look of admiration appeared on his handsome face. He then ran to Lung Ruoxue's side and exclaimed, Ruoxue, Zhou Kun is so brave. You actually dare to fight someone of a higher level than you. In fact, he couldn't tell the man's cultivation level, and there could only be two reasons for such a situation. One was that the man's strength was above theirs, and the other was that he had hidden his cultivation. However, participants were not allowed to hide their strength here, otherwise, it would be unfair to the other participants. Therefore, he concluded that the man's strength was above theirs. However, Zhou Kun was obviously too busy venting his anger, and didn't pay attention to the man's cultivation at all. He rushed forward without a care. Although he wanted to do that too, he was not an impulsive person by nature. Therefore, he was naturally not as brainless as Zhou Kun. He used more wisdom. Just like how he was with Ruoxue, hee. After hearing Ji Yun's words, Lung Ruoxue shot him a glance and whispered, This man clearly has ill intentions. Now is not the time to make sarcastic remarks. Quickly go and help him. As for why there was a God King level participant here, only the heavens would know. Oh, Ji Yun softly replied, feeling a little wronged. In truth, he wasn't just being sarcastic. Although he didn't deny that he had the intention of watching the show, he was more worried about what they should do. If they couldn't deal with this man, then Ruoxue would be in deep trouble. Ji Yun, who was feeling a little depressed, immediately gave Ji Wu and Ji Tao a look. The two of them understood and rushed over to help Zhou Kun. Although they hated Zhou Kun from the bottom of their hearts, they were now on the same boat. Therefore, they naturally could not sit idly by. With Ji Wu and Ji Tao joining the battle, Zhou Kun, who was already sweating profusely and had cold sweat all over his forehead, suddenly felt a lot less pressure. Fuck. It was only after the fight that he realized that this despicable man was stronger than him. After knowing this fact, he had a moment of regret, but at the same time, he was also very clear that he had already driven a duck to the perch. He couldn't back down now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hold his head high in front of the Ji family's coward in the future. Although the pressure on Zhou Kun was reduced, the wretched-looking man felt that it was a little difficult to deal with three people at the same time. Initially, he was more than capable of dealing with Zhou Kun alone. But now that there were two more people, he not only had to guard against Zhou Kun's attack, but also the sneak attack of the other two people at the same time. Hence, he seemed to be a little flustered. Although he was stronger than Ji Wu and the others, he wasn't strong enough to withstand a group attack. After all, his cultivation wasn't at the peak of the God King level. As a result, it was impossible for him to take on 100 people at once. But now, he had only dealt with 3 people, and his steps were a bit messy. He thought that the other party would be intimidated by his cultivation, and would be afraid of shooting at the rat for fear of breaking the vase. He didn't expect that these young fellows were like newborn calves who weren't afraid of tigers. They knew that his strength was above them, but they still dared to fight him head-on. This fact made him quite depressed. In fact, he had completely guessed wrong, because Zhou Kun had rushed forward to fight with him without any regard previously, not because he was not afraid, but because he had been impulsive. Otherwise, if Zhou Kun had known in advance that his cultivation base was higher than his, he might not have dared to do that. After seeing that this man was just a man with an empty appearance, Lung Ruoxue turned to Zhou Li and Zhou Qing coldly and said, "Your young master Kun is fighting with someone. Aren't you going to help?" She had a very bad impression of Zhou Kun and his lackeys, especially at a time like this. Zhou Kuan was leading the charge, but the two of them actually showed fear. Not only did they not have any intention of helping, but they even took a few steps back. This also made Lung Ruoxia's impression of them drop to the bottom. The other party's cultivation is above ours. Can we defeat him? Zhou Li couldn't help but say in a low voice. He only wanted to keep his little life and didn't want to die here. How would you know if you don't try? Do you want to die here? If we don't deal with this man, none of us will be able to escape. Lung Ruoxia reminded. No, that's impossible. His target is you. As long as you stay, he'll definitely let us live. Zhou Qing said as well. He was still a little resentful in his heart, because the cause of this incident was Lung Ruoxia. Now they were even implicated. Sop. Why were their lives so bitter? What did you just say? Hearing Zhou Cheng's words, Lung Ruoxia narrowed her beautiful eyes and asked in an unfriendly tone. Say that again. Ji Yin also roared with unusual anger. For a moment, the aura on his body rose greatly. Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li were completely dumbfounded. However, they believed that their eyes were playing tricks on them. It was impossible for cowards from the Ji family to have such an intimidating aura. It must be. The two of them consoled themselves in their hearts. It's all because of this woman that we've attracted a strong enemy. So isn't it fine to just hand her over to that man? Zhou Cheng warned as he did not sense any danger from Ji Yun. Is that so? Lung Ruoxia laughed coldly, feeling even more disgusted with the two lackeys of the Zhou family. However, before she could do anything, she saw a black bolt of lightning charging towards Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li. In that instant, other than the sounds of Zhou Kuan, Ji Wu, and Ji Tao fighting with the wretched-looking man, there was only the sudden shrill shrieks that sounded like the wails of ghosts and the howls of wolves. Arg! Help me! The long and trembling cry caused Lung Ruoxia's hair to stand on end. She couldn't help but wonder why a man's scream was so shocking. However, what surprised her even more was Ji Yun. This fellow's attacks were fast, ruthless, and accurate. He specifically aimed for the weak and vital parts of a man's body, causing Lung Ruoxia to be extremely shocked. Oh my god! Was this the model of a small white rabbit transforming into a fierce big tiger? He didn't expect that Ji Yun, who had always pretended to be a weak little white rabbit, would be so intimidating when he was angry. Seeing Ji Yun's left fist and right leg beating up Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng, baby, who was lying in Lung Ruoxia's arms and watching the show, also felt his claws itch. Without even greeting Lung Ruoxia, he impatiently rushed into the one-sided battle between Ji Yun, Zhou Li, and Zhou Cheng. Watch my shadowless claw. Baby roared. After that, its four claws flew out, kicking and scratching repeatedly, and its tail even acted as a whip. Pa! In the blink of an eye, Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng's clothes were torn and dangled on their bodies. They were in danger of being exposed at any time. Not only that, their faces and bodies were covered with countless claw marks. Needless to say, these were all the work of the treasure. In fact, it had long wanted to teach the three people of the Zhou family a lesson. However, seeing that Zhou Kun's performance today was rather remarkable, it decided to let him off for the time being. However, it would never let go of the two dogs. Humph. He actually wanted to hand over his cute master to that disgusting and wretched man. If this wasn't courting death, what was? At the thought of this, its shadowless claw once again displayed the advantage of being impossible to guard against. Very quickly, Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng fainted in a tragic state. After the baby made its move, the two could do nothing but let out painful howls until they finally fainted. The treasure's natural and smooth movements left Ji Yun dumbstruck. At this moment, he even felt that he had been too lenient. Look at how ruthless this little fox is. It turned out that it was not his own flesh. He glanced at the minced meat that had fallen beside Zhou Cheng and Zhou Li. He was so disgusted that he almost vomited his lunch. Sop. He probably wouldn't want to eat meat for a while. It was really too horrifying. The claw marks on Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng's faces and bodies were extremely deep. Following the tiny scratch marks, blood continuously flowed out from their bodies. Very quickly, a small patch of the ground was dyed red, and it mixed with the bits of flesh that had fallen to the ground. The scene was truly terrifying. This caused Lung Ruoxia and Ji Yun to turn their heads away. not wanting to look at the bloody scene. After Baby cooperated with Ji Yun to punish Zhou Li and Zhou Cheng, Baby, who clearly hadn't had enough fun with his claws, turned his attention to the vulgar man. After proudly looking at Lung Ruoxue and Ji Yun, whose little face had turned pale from fear, the baby was like a purple lightning bolt. It immediately rushed in front of the vulgar man and roared, "Grandson, your grandfather is here. Quickly die." Upon hearing this, Lung Ruoxue's forehead was filled with black lines. As for the pale-faced Ji Yun, his clear eyes were sparkling as he looked at the purple figure of light dancing up and down with admiration. Had a new idol. Chapter 1856. The Tragedy of the Wretched Man 1. Ji Yun's eyes were fixed on the treasure in the chaotic battle. It seized every opportunity to attack from the left and right, and he couldn't help but cheer for it in his heart. Good luck. Scratch him to death. Ji Yun couldn't help but exclaim in excitement. When Lung Ruoxue saw his helping the evildoer, more cold sweat broke out on her forehead. The treasure, who was looking for an opportunity in the midst of Ji Wu's group's chaotic battle, heard Ji Yun's shout of encouragement, and began to scratch even harder. Suddenly, a purple lightning bolt could be seen dancing up and down in the group's chaotic battle. It was accompanied by the wretched man's ear-piercing scream, forming a unique concert. "Arg! That damn little save life. I won't let you off." The wretched man whose face was covered in blood roared in anger, and reached out to grab the treasure. However, the petite baby was unusually agile. The vulgar man could only see a purple shadow scuttling around in front of him, but he could not catch it. This fact made him even angrier. "Little save life. You're dead." The vulgar man wiped the fresh blood off his face and continued to roar. "You're the little save life. Your whole family is a little reserved." When Baby heard himself being scolded, he scolded back without any restraint. "Damn it. If I don't kill you today, my last name isn't Sun." The vulgar man was both embarrassed and angry. Other than a red color on his face, there was basically no other color. However, one could imagine how furious he was at this moment when one felt the anger spewing out from his body. "Don't you change your surname to Sun. If you don't have the surname Sun, how can I be your grandfather?" Baby said angrily. At the same time, he started to attack the vulgar man's bottom lane. "Awoo!" An even more painful and shrill cry suddenly rang out. The vulgar man clutched his lower body tightly and kept jumping around on the spot. His face was filled with an expression of extreme pain. When Ji Wu and the others saw this, they subconsciously stopped what they were doing. However, their eyes were still fixed on the vulgar man. However, with the wretched-looking man's current state, he probably couldn't care about them. Looking at the part he was covering, Ji Wu and the others expressed deep sympathy for him. He wondered if that fellow would still be able to be humane after being hit by the little fox a few times. How pitiful. They laughed gloatingly. At this time, the vulgar man also immediately took out a healing pill and ate it. The pain was relieved a lot, but the strange thing was that there was still a faint pain there, accompanied by a trace of itchiness. What was going on? Although he had doubts in his heart, he had no time to care about them. All his anger was instantly concentrated on the little fox who was smiling at him not far away. Umph. He would not let go of this detestable little reserved life. As for these few men, he would continue to deal with them after he had dealt with this annoying little Qiansheng. At the thought of this, he immediately shifted his target to his baby. With a leap, he went straight to his baby. However, his baby would not stand there stupidly and wait for him. Instead, it nimbly jumped behind Zhou Kuan to seek protection. In this way, it was impossible for Zhou Kuan to stay out of it even if he wanted to. Hee. Seeing that the little fox had drawn the hatred of the wretched man to him, Zhou Kuan was furious. Damn it! He had just wanted to catch his breath with great difficulty, but in the end he had been harmed by this hateful little fox. At this time his mind was a lot clearer. Naturally, he could see that this wretched man's strength was above his own. Therefore, he had a slight intention to retreat in his heart. However, he had always been concerned about his face. If he fled without fighting, he would have no face to see anyone after this news spread. That was why he had been holding on. He had thought that since the wretched man had shifted his target to the little fox, there was nothing left for him to do. He could also take the opportunity to leave the battle circle. Who knew that not only was he unable to leave, but he was also dragged into it again. He was so depressed. As the wretched man pounced on Zhou Kun like a tiger, Zhou Kun hurriedly mobilized the divine power in his body to stop him. At this time, Baby stood on top of Zhou Kun's head and commanded him condescendingly. Hurry up. Beat him down there. He'll never be able to harm women again. Zhou Kun, you should use more strength. What, you didn't eat? Why is it so soft and powerless? Zhou Kun, are you still a man? Can you still do it? AI. To think that you're so big, I didn't expect you to be so weak. You're so useless. Zhou Kun, didn't I tell you to hit him down there? Why don't you listen? Zhou Kun, if you don't listen to my command, I'll have to teach you a good lesson. The baby continued to shout loudly, making Zhou Kun furious and angry. The aura in his body exploded instantly, and a chill pounced on the wretched man. In an instant, the wretched man's lower body was hit again. Arg. Damn it. I won't let you off. You're dead. The wretched-looking man, who was in unbearable pain, roared with all his might. He glared at Zhou Kun fiercely with his eyes that were spewing fire, as if he was going to swallow Zhou Kun alive. On the other hand, Zhou Kun was a little dumbfounded. He was clearly not going to hit that place. Woo. How did this happen? He could not understand. After glancing at the fire-spewing lecherous man and then at Zhou Kun, who was a little dumbfounded, Baby patted Zhou Kun's head like an elder and praised him. Zhou family's kid, well done. Come. Continue. We won't stop until he's beaten into a eunuch. What's a eunuch? Upon hearing Baby's words, Zhou Kun was in a daze, and he couldn't help but ask dumbly. Ha. A eunuch was a man who couldn't have sex and didn't have that thing. Our goal is to turn this vulgar man into the first eunuch of the divine realm. Now let's work towards this goal. Of course, if you can't turn him into a eunuch, I'll make you one. So it's up to you. The treasure issued an order with a hint of threat. As for whether this wretched man would become the first eunuch of the divine realm, it was not within its scope of consideration. If anyone was interested in this title, they could communicate with it themselves. It only cared about creating eunuchs and did not care about the ranking between them. Upon hearing that, Zhou Kun shuddered and became much more awake. However, at that moment, his back was already drenched in cold sweat. It was obvious that he was frightened by the baby. Moreover, in order to ensure that he would not become the eunuch that the little fox was talking about, he could only work hard to let others have this profession. Woo. He could not understand why he was afraid of the threat of a little fox. The little fox looked too harmless. However, a guy who looked harmless on the outside was often more terrifying. Now he had a deep understanding of it. Looks like I can't judge a book by its cover in the future. Of course, he couldn't judge a beast by its appearance. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.